Chapter 2557, was Feng Wu second? Chapter 2557, was Feng Wu second? Gu Xingyuan's team had some very capable members. The team leader was Pei Si, one of the top students of Class E and Sun Jingyu's top rival. Chu Junying went everywhere with Gu Xingyuan, so of course she was in the team. The other one was Pei Si's friend. Those were the 5 members of Team 2. Mu Qianqian ran into them, and Pei Si killed the 2 white lion elephants chasing her without difficulty. Mu Qianqian. Pei Si stopped her. Why are you here? Where's your team? Mu Qianqian counted the dead white lion elephants on the ground, and saw that there were a few dozen. She then saw the sack hanging on Pei Si's belt, and felt her heart sink. There were at least a couple of hundred of crystal cores in it. Where's Sun Jingyu? Why isn't she with you? Where's your team? Pei Si asked. There were so many white lion elephants. I barely managed to get away. I need to find a teacher. We need help. Mu Qianqian pointed in the direction she had come from. Pei Si frowned. What happened? Mu Qianqian panicked. She couldn't afford the consequences if all 4 teammates died, especially if Sun Jingyu was one of them, since the latter's family was both rich and influential. At that thought, she burst into tears. I saw many white lion elephants and everyone panicked, so I ran. I ran as fast as I could. Pei Si's eyes widened a little. Many white lion elephants? Did your teammates get away? Sun Jingyu was her rival who had the most capability. I don't know. I think they did. It was so chaotic that we couldn't care about anyone else. Mu Qianqian tried her best to make herself sound innocent. Gu Xingyuan wasn't interested. Pei Si suddenly asked. If I remember correctly, there's a new student in your team, right? Mu Qianqian was frustrated at the thought of Feng Wu. Yes. We have 2 actually. One is Feng Wu and the other is Duan Chaoga. I don't know where to begin. Wait. Mu Qianqian suddenly came up with an idea to shift the blame. It was Feng Wu. She overestimated herself and lured in too many white lion elephants. She's to be blamed if anything happens to Jingyu. Feng Wu. Gu Xingyuan was intrigued. The Gu family held a grudge against Feng Wu, and he wanted her dead. Is Feng Wu dead? Gu Xingyuan stared at Mu Qianqian. Mu Qianqian said, I don't know. I don't know what happened after I left. I need to find Mr. Luo, our assistant tutor. Several tutors were patrolling the outer region of the forest to keep the students safe. Mr. Luo arrived at that moment. Mu Qianqian was thrilled. She ran to his side and complained about Feng Wu. She said that Feng Wu was an ignorant new student who had lured in too many white lion elephants. Sun Jingyu, their class president, might have been killed for it. Dead. Comment. The news soon spread. Another team was with Mr. Luo. It was the one that Lu Xiao and Zhenya were in. Zhenya had always held a grudge against Ziling, and had been paying special attention to her after the latter paired up with Sun Jingyu. Chapter 2558 Feng Wu's Fault. Chapter 2558 Feng Wu's Fault. Before Zhenya could ask anything, Mr. Luo set out to look for the team. Pei Si felt that with the tutor here, they would be safe. I don't know why, but there are much fewer white lion elephants now. Shall we look around? Pei Si looked at Gu Xingyuan. Gu Xingyuan nodded and marched out. Pei Si was the team leader, but Gu Xingyuan was a level 6 spiritual lord. After he demonstrated his ability, he became the key member of the team. After Pei Si's team followed Mr. Luo, Lu Xiao wanted to leave with them as well. Zhenya didn't want to go and kept tugging at him. Lu Xiao said coldly, You can't stop me. I have to go. He quickly followed the others. It's because of Ziling, isn't it? You like her. Zhenya had tears in her eyes. Lu Xiao ignored her. Zhenya was frustrated, but she was worried that something would happen between Lu Xiao and Ziling, so she stomped her foot and followed him. She knew that a man would always be soft-hearted toward an injured woman. She had used a lot of tricks to win Lu Xiao's heart, and she wasn't going to let Ziling win him back. Mr. Luo was surprised when he saw Sun Jingyu, because all 4 girls looked completely fine. There wasn't a scratch on them, and even their faces were clean. He asked Sun Jingyu, Are you all right? Sun Jingyu was perplexed. Yes, we're fine. Sir, why are you here? Mu Qianqian arrived at that moment, and she couldn't believe her eyes when she saw that Sun Jingyu was still alive. Feng Wu and the others were alive as well, and none of them seemed injured. Mu Qianqian said, Didn't the white lion elephants surround you? How? Pei Si and her team were surprised to see them as well. She said, You're not dead. Sun Jingyu smirked. Does that disappoint you? Pei Si chuckled awkwardly. Jingyu, of course not. We're not that sort of people. Sun Jingyu smirked and thought, Who are you trying to fool? She then turned to Mr. Luo. We ran into some white lion elephants, but we're no longer in danger. Please don't worry. Pei Si asked Mu Qianqian, Didn't you say? Mu Qianqian realized what she was asking. She ran to Sun Jingyu's side and said loudly, Jingyu, it was Feng Wu's fault. She lured in all the white lion elephants. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been in danger. Sun Jingyu wanted to roll her eyes. Mu Qianqian didn't know what she was thinking, and even winked at her. Chu Junying jumped at the opportunity. Did you say that Feng Wu lured in too many white lion elephants? Mu Qianqian said, Yes. There were so many of them. If it wasn't for her, we would never have. Sun Jingyu glared at her. Shut up. Mu Qianqian knew perfectly well who had lured in the white lion elephants, but she still tried to blame it on Feng Wu. She had no idea how capable Feng Wu was. Sun Jingyu recalled how Feng Wu had killed so many white lion elephants with a single strike. Chapter 2559 Terrifying Feng Wu. Chapter 2559 Terrifying Feng Wu. Sun Jingyu gave Mu Qianqian a stern look. Mu Qianqian was confused. She knew that Sun Jingyu wanted to kill Feng Wu, and now was a great opportunity. Why was Sun Jingyu giving her that look? Mu Qianqian couldn't figure it out. Chu Junying still tried to circle back to Feng Wu, so she said, I'm sure Jingyu turned things around and saved you all from the white lion elephants. That's the good thing about teaming up with the class president. Feng Wu, you're so lucky. All the other new students gave Feng Wu envious looks. Sun Jingyu wanted to explain, but she knew doing so might reveal some secrets, so she glanced at Feng Wu. Seeing that Feng Wu wasn't going to explain, Sun Jingyu remained silent as well. The others took her attitude for tacit acknowledgement. Mr. Luo said, If everything's fine, let's get back to the hunt. He walked away after that. Pei Si smiled at Sun Jingyu. Jingyu, I have an idea. Would you like to hear it? Sun Jingyu didn't like Pei Si, but she had to show her some respect while everyone was watching, so she said indifferently, Go ahead. Pei Si said, Since we have 3 teams here, why don't we form an alliance and hunt a pack of white lion elephants together? A pack? Sun Jingyu found the suggestion idiotic. She wondered how Pei Si would react if she knew that Feng Wu had killed the entire herd. She smiled inwardly. However, she pretended that she didn't know anything. A pack? Well, Pei Si said, Didn't you run into a pack earlier? All we need to do is lure them here. I'm sure our 3 teams will be more than enough to handle a dozen beasts. A dozen, you say? Sun Jingyu asked deliberately. Pei Si said, If you think that's too much, we can do fewer than 10 just to be safe. Sun Jingyu smiled at her. Pei Si asked, Do you have a different opinion? Sun Jingyu said, My opinion has nothing to do with it. It's just, she wanted to say that Feng Wu had destroyed the white lion elephant's habitat, and there were no beasts left in the outer ring of the forest. But she knew that the tutors would be furious if she said that. The white lion elephants were there to help the students train their fighting skills, and the academy had invested in resources for raising them, but now. Pei Si looked around and asked, Have you noticed something? Chu Junying asked, What is it? Pei Si said, Why do I feel that the white lion elephants have disappeared? Usually, we should see individual beasts along the road, but I haven't seen a single one of them since we arrived. Sun Jingyu glanced at Pei Si with a sense of superiority. Chun Junying said, We didn't find many white lion elephants either. Did we kill them all? Don't be ridiculous. Pei Si didn't agree. There are thousands of them, and they multiply very fast. We can kill as many of them as we want, and there will always be more. Just then they heard someone cry out. It was Mingjie, Pacey's friend. Mingjie shouted, "Guys, come here." Pacey frowned. "Let's have a look." She led her team to Mingjie. Chapter 2560. Who did it? Chapter 2560. Who did it? Lu Xiao kept his gaze on Ziling. His reaction made Jinya nervous. She tugged at him and said, "Let's go have a look." Lu Xiao was noticeably reluctant to do so, because he wanted to stay with Ziling and see if she had been hurt. Ziling glanced at him and turned to Feng Wu. "Let's go back." Feng Wu could see that something was going on between Ziling and Lu Xiao. She could also see that something was going on between him and Jinya. But since Ziling wanted to leave, Pacey came over before Feng Wu could say anything and told them, "You better come with me. Mister, Luo wants to see you." Feng Wu knew that they had found out about the white lion elephants. To save herself from future trouble, she knew she had to offer an explanation, so she nodded and followed Pacey. Her team followed her. Despite her conflicted feelings, Sun Jingyu followed her. Mr. Luo's face was livid, and the students couldn't believe their eyes. Sun Jingyu knew what had happened, but Feng Wu had told her to keep it to herself, so she pretended that she didn't know anything. Pacey asked her, "Jingyu, what happened?" Sun Jingyu gave her a strange look. "What do you mean? You don't think that I killed all those white lion elephants, do you?" Pacey rolled her eyes at her. "Dream on, Mr. Luo said. There are over 1,000 white lion elephants here, and their heads have all exploded. Even I couldn't do it, let alone you." Sun Jingyu asked, "Mr. Luo, even you couldn't do it?" Mr. Luo nodded. "I don't think even Mr. Zhu could do it." Classy had one chief tutor and numerous assistant tutors. Mr. Zhu was the chief tutor and Mr. Luo was one of the assistants. Sun Jingyu couldn't help but glance at Feng Wu. She thought very highly of Feng Wu now, but as it turned out, she still had no idea of her full potential. By the sound of it, she was even more capable than the chief tutor. Sun Jingyu wondered if Chief Qingwan, who had been hostile toward Feng Wu since day one, knew Feng Wu's real ability. "Jingyu? Jingyu!" Mu Qianqian tugged at Sun Jingyu's sleeve and woke her up from her reverie. "Mr. Luo is talking to you," she whispered. She wondered what Sun Jingyu was thinking. Sun Jingyu looked at Mr. Luo in bewilderment. He had just asked her if she knew what happened. Not only did she know, she had also experienced it for herself. However, Feng Wu wouldn't let her talk about it. Sun Jingyu could only smile bitterly. "I was too busy running for my life to notice anything else. Maybe you could ask Feng Wu." That was the person that could give the final answer. Mr. Luo narrowed his eyes. He could have asked Feng Wu, but he didn't. In fact, he hadn't glanced at Feng Wu since he arrived. He had deliberately ignored her. Therefore, he waved Sun Jingyu off. "I'm sure some tutors saw that you were in danger, so they gave you a hand and walked off after that." Sun Jingyu remembered the rumor about the academy deliberately raising white lion elephants. Chapter 2561. Feng Wu's Fault 1. Chapter 2561. Feng Wu's Fault 1. Sun Jingyu thought, didn't the academy raise the white lion elephants so that the students could use them to train their fighting skills? Why would a tutor kill them all? That doesn't make sense. But since Mr. Luo had said so, the others believed him. Pacey said to Sun Jingyu, "Be grateful to that tutor, or all of you would have been in great trouble." Sun Jingyu was speechless. Gu Xingyuan glanced at Feng Wu. He had his doubts and wondered if Feng Wu had killed the beasts. However, there were over 1,000 of them, so he decided that it couldn't have been her. She wasn't powerful enough. Pacey sounded sorry when she said, "The white lion elephants have been wiped out, so the event has to end here. By the way, how many crystal cores do you have?" She looked curiously at Sun Jingyu. Sun Jingyu glanced at her. "How many do you have?" Pacey chuckled. "We've collected 150 already. How about you?" Sun Jingyu shrugged. "I'm not in charge of the crystal cores." By that, she meant that she had no idea how many crystal cores Feng Wu had collected. Pacey thought that Sun Jingyu was being pretentious and became displeased. She looked at the dead white lion elephants. If the mysterious tutor killed them, the crystal cores should still be there. Excited, she ran to the beasts to check their heads. However, the crystal cores were all gone. Where are the crystal cores? She stared at Sun Jingyu. Chaoga said mockingly. Where do you think? Pacey asked. You didn't take them all, did you? Chaoga crossed her arms. It's none of your business. Pacey was furious and said sarcastically. You're just a new student, so behave like one. Jingyu, aren't you going to do something about it? Do something about it? Sun Jingyu thought. I'm the second weakest person in this team. Who am I to discipline Duan Chaoga? She'll probably discipline me first. In the end, they went back to the academy, because there were no more white lion elephants around. Everyone was talking about it when they got back. This was the first time that students had to come back early, because they didn't have anything to hunt. The students of Class E were avidly discussing it in the square. I heard that some mysterious tutor gave them a hand and killed all the white lion elephants. You mean Jingyu's team? They're all experienced students. Why would they be in such danger? Jingyu and Mu Qianqian wouldn't have put themselves in danger. But have you forgotten who else is in that team? Do you mean Feng Wu? The one that Chief Qingwan tried to pick? That's right. She's useless, but she's so arrogant. Someone like that is bound to create trouble. According to Mu Qianqian, Feng Wu was the one who lured in the white lion elephants. Feng Wu is so pretty, and I almost became her fan. I didn't know she was that type of person. If it wasn't for her, the mission wouldn't have ended earlier than expected. That's right. I was going to make great use of this opportunity. I even bought some potions for this event. Now that has all gone to waste. Many students of Class E held a grudge. They needed an outlet, and Feng Wu became their target. Chapter 2562, Feng Wu's Fault 2. Chapter 2562, Feng Wu's Fault 2. Sun Jingyu didn't know what to say when she heard all the discussion. How idiotic were they? Did they really believe that Feng Wu was useless, and that she had lured in the white lion elephants? If they knew that Feng Wu had killed 1,000 white lion elephants with one strike, they would be shivering inside out, just like her. However, Sun Jingyu felt excited at the same time, because she was the only one who knew how capable Feng Wu was. Her classmates were all idiots. Chaoga nearly lost control, but the thought of Feng Wu calmed her down. She looked around, and remembered every person who said bad things about Feng Wu. Mr. Luo arrived shortly after that. He had asked around, but no tutor in the academy acknowledged that they had done such a thing, which perplexed him. However, he stuck to his conclusion when he talked to the students. A tutor did it. After that, the students were ranked by performance, and were rewarded with points. All they needed to do was hand in the crystal cores. As for the best member in each team, every student's armband was scanned, and the system would decide who the best team member was. Even the tutors didn't have access to the data. The rankings of the teams were announced in reverse order. The 300th team was awarded first, and the first team last. Feng Wu was in Team 1. Gu Xingyuan was in Team 2. Zhenya and Lu Zhao's team was Team 50. The team leader handed in their crystal cores, and the rankings were displayed on the big screen. Whoosh! The first team was Team 1, and the team leader was Sun Jingyu. The second team was Team 2, and the team leader was Pacey. The 100th team was Team 50, and the team leader was Lu Xiao. The students were shocked. Team 1 is the top team. Weren't they in grave danger? How did they earn so many points? Jingyu is amazing. She and Mu Qianqian made that possible despite having 3 unhelpful teammates. You don't say. They would never have earned so many points if they didn't have Jingyu with them. I wish I had her in my team. I heard that they were very lucky. The tutor left without taking the crystal cores, so they picked up everything. Gosh, how can anyone be so lucky? I'm so envious. I thought Pacey's team would be the best one. After all, they have Pacey, the second best student in our class, and there's Gu Xingyuan as well. I heard that he's already a level 6 spiritual lord. Seriously? Most of the students in our class are level 3 spiritual lords. That's so impressive. I think he'll be the next top student in our class. They were still discussing the possibilities when the names of the best team members were displayed next to their teams. Team 1, Feng Wu. The students were all dumbfounded. Feng Wu? How's that possible? How can it be her? Why isn't it Sun Jingyu? Didn't you say that Jingyu and Mu Qianqian saved the team together? Why is Feng Wu the best team member? Chapter 2563 Black Crow. Chapter 2563 Black Crow. That's right. Didn't Feng Wu put the team in danger? I thought she was useless. Why is she the best teammate? Wasn't that self-contradictory? The others looked at one another and were confused. That didn't make any sense. Mr. Luo, is there something wrong with the system? Pacey asked. Everyone nodded and looked at him expectantly. Something had to be wrong. It couldn't be Feng Wu. Mr. Luo wished that was the case. However, there's nothing wrong with the system, Mr. Luo said calmly. If that was the case, that meant that Feng Wu had received that title because she deserved the reward. Zhenya suddenly asked, is it because Feng Wu picked up the most crystal cores? Could that be the case? Everyone's eyes lit up. Pacey raised her hand. Sir, does the system rank us based on how many crystal cores are handed in? No one knew what the standards were. Mr. Luo said, there's no question about the accuracy of the rankings. The students weren't satisfied with the answer, but they found ways to convince themselves. That must be the case. Feng Wu picked up the most crystal cores and became the best team member. She's shameless. I agree with you. She was the one who lured in all the white lion elephants. But after the tutor saved them, the first thing she did was to gather the crystal cores. I can't believe it. I feel so sorry for Jingyu. She was the leader of the team, but Feng Wu became the best team member. That's outright betrayal. Sun Jingyu couldn't stand them anymore. She glared at them and shouted, you don't know what you're talking about. Feng Wu deserves to have all the crystal cores. No one is more qualified than she is. All the students were surprised. They never expected their class president to be on Feng Wu's side. They gave Feng Wu strange looks. Zhenya mumbled, Jingyu is such a nice person. She was robbed of the honor, but she's trying to defend Feng Wu. She's the best class president. The others agreed with her and admired Sun Jingyu for what she said. They only despised Feng Wu even more. Sun Jingyu wanted to cry. She wished these people would stop talking. Shut up, all of you. That's the end of the discussion. If anyone says anything, they'll be banned from our next event. Sun Jingyu had to shut them up. As the class president, she had the right to ban her classmates from attending the events. But she couldn't stop them from discussing it. What she did only made the rumor spread further. The students scattered after the points were distributed, and they gathered in 2s and 3s, as everyone talked about today's events in low voices. They even gave Feng Wu a nickname, Black Crow. The name indicated how much misfortune Feng Wu represented. Chaoga was furious. But nothing she did could stop these people from talking. In room 2001, Chaoga grabbed a cleaver. I'm so mad. I can't stand them. Chapter 2564. I don't want to talk to you. Chapter 2564. I don't want to talk to you. Chaoga said. Xiao Wu, let go of me. I'm gonna kill them. They're so vicious. Are they majoring in professional quarreling? Feng Wu chuckled. Chaoga stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. How can you laugh? They're slandering you. They're calling you Black Crow. Ziling also found Feng Wu incredible. How tough did her mind have to be for her to remain unaffected? Feng Wu laughed. Black Crow. I kinda like it. Chaoga didn't understand how anyone could like such a name, and didn't know what to say. Feng Wu shrugged. Someone once told me that I should be able to withstand as much slander as the praise I receive. Plus, that can hardly be called slandering. Chaoga still couldn't understand her. She had been criticized all her life. She would lose her temper when other people said bad things about her, and would rejoice when they complimented her. Feng Wu, on the other hand, seemed to be able to anticipate everything, and could take criticism much better. Feng Wu said, There. I'll teach them a lesson next time. Happy? Chao asked. Are you training me in patience now? Feng Wu shrugged. It seemed that Chao had guessed the answer this time. Something occurred to Chao. You didn't tell Sun Jingyu to tell the truth. You stopped her on purpose. You wanted those people to think that you have no talent, because you want to use this chance to make me more patient. Is that it? Feng Wu smiled at her. Chao said grumpily, I don't want to talk to you anymore. She walked away to sulk in a corner. Meanwhile, Sun Jingyu was in her room. After she calmed down, she couldn't stop thinking about how Feng Wu had killed 1,000 white lion elephants with one strike. That was amazing. She was lost in thought. It had never occurred to her that she would genuinely admire Feng Wu for her talent. She almost wished that she could become Feng Wu's minion. Mu Qianqian and Sun Jingyu lived in the same dormitory, and the former wouldn't stop talking. Feng Wu is so annoying. I didn't expect her to become the best team member. Apart from the honor, she also earned 100 points. Jingyu, what are we going to do about Feng Wu? You spoke up for her, which was such a brilliant move. Everyone finds you such a generous person now. That was so clever. Jingyu. Seeing that Sun Jingyu was deep in thought, Mu Qianqian gave her a nudge. Sun Jingyu said, What? What did you say? Mu Qianqian repeated what she said. Sun Jingyu gave her a contemptuous look. It made Mu Qianqian uneasy. She wondered if she had said something wrong. Sun Jingyu pointed at her. You're such an idiot. Mu Qianqian said. What? Sun Jingyu was interrupted by a knock at the door. Mu Qianqian went to answer it. It was Wang Junwen, a student of Class D. She didn't like Feng Wu either. She didn't ask Mu Qianqian to leave, and questioned Sun Jingyu straight away. Did you forget your task? Didn't you promise me that you would finish off Feng Wu? What the hell? Chapter 2565 Untitled. Chapter 2565 Untitled. Wang Junwen glared at Sun Jingyu. Yes. She was the one who had given Sun Jingyu the mission to kill Feng Wu, and Sun Jingyu had failed. Sun Jingyu shrugged. I couldn't do it. Wang Junwen didn't expect her to be so straightforward. She frowned. I can understand that you failed once, but you can always try again. Of course, Sun Jingyu didn't dare try again. She raised her voice. I'm not doing it. Wang Junwen gave Sun Jingyu a strange look. What's that supposed to mean? Mu Qianqian was surprised as well. Sun Jingyu had spent a lot to kill Feng Wu, including on all the explosive balls. Didn't she want to make it worth her while? Sun Jingyu looked alarmed and said solemnly, Junwen, I hope you can understand something. Wang Junwen said, Go ahead. Sun Jingyu said, I can't reveal too much, but I have to remind you. Feng Wu isn't someone we can touch. You better give up that idea. Wang Junwen didn't think much of her warning, and only gave her a cold glance. You've made up your mind then? Sun Jingyu nodded. Yes, and I hope you'll keep your promise. This stays between us. Wang Junwen frowned. She wasn't ready to give up. What if I double the reward? Sun Jingyu said. I don't have a death wish. She didn't have a death wish. Wang Junwen smirked. Fine. Sun Jingyu, that's your final answer then. You know, plenty of people out there will jump at the opportunity. She then stormed off. Junwen? Mu Qianqian ran after Wang Junwen, but the latter soon disappeared down the corridor. Mu Qianqian came back and said to Sun Jingyu in resignation, Jingyu, you shouldn't have offended Junwen. She's from Class D. The 5 classes were of 5 different levels. To students of Class D, students of Class E were so weak that they could bully them however they wanted. To Class E, students of Class D were too powerful for them to mess with. Sun Jingyu stared at Mu Qianqian. Do you know who killed those white lion elephants? Mu Qianqian asked. Who? Sun Jingyu glanced at her. Who do you think? Mu Qianqian was perplexed. Wasn't it a mysterious tutor? Sun Jingyu smiled. Mu Qianqian tilted her head. Could it be Duan Chaoga? No, she's only slightly better than me. She couldn't have done it. It couldn't have been Ziling either. So, OMG. Mu Qianqian covered her mouth. No, it couldn't have been her. Feng Wu. Was it really her? Yes. Sun Jingyu was pleased to see the astonished look on Mu Qianqian's face. Unlike Mu Qianqian, she had seen it with her own eyes. Mu Qianqian said, "How's that possible? There were over 1,000 white lion elephants." "Are you sure?" Sun Jingyu grabbed her bucket to get some water, and said casually before she left, "I saw it with my own eyes." Mu Qianqian looked like she had been struck by lightning. Was Feng Wu even human? Chapter 2566 Untitled. Chapter 2566 Untitled. Mu Qianqian had hung out with Sun Jingyu long enough to know her well. There was no need for Sun Jingyu to lie about it. Moreover, she had turned down Wang Junwen so decisively. What about Junwen? Meanwhile, Feng Wu was calculating her points. Before the event, she had just 10 points left. Their team won first place, so each team member was given 100 points. Being the MVP, she earned an extra 100 points. Therefore, she had 210 points. Chaoga had 110 points. Feng Wu took Chaoga and Ziling to the school canteen. According to Ziling, all the ingredients used in the dishes in the canteen came from magical beasts of the Thousand Night Forest. Having a meal there increased one's spiritual essence a little, and was beneficial to one's cultivation. The canteen was divided into two sections, ready-to-eat and stir-fry. Ready-to-eat dishes were already cooked, and one only had to line up to put the food on their tray. However, it was common knowledge that these types of dishes weren't the best in terms of quality. Stir-fry dishes were different, because one could order them with specific ingredients. Such dishes ensured that the spiritual essence in the ingredients could be retained at the highest level. Ziling led Feng Wu and Chaoga to the queue and suggested, "Shall we have 4 dishes? We came in first. We must celebrate." 4 dishes were considered a celebration? Chaoga asked curiously. "What do you usually eat then?" Ziling said, "Vegetables poured over rice. It's quite tasty." Chaoga was speechless. She went to the front of the line to take a look at the ready-to-eat dishes, and when she came back she said, "They don't look that tasty to me. Plus, they've been sitting there for so long that there's hardly any spiritual essence left." Ziling said, "But it's good enough for us. We can't afford the stir-fry dishes." Chaoga said, "I see that with the ready-to-eat dishes, meat dishes cost 5 points, vegetable dishes 3 points, and rice 1 point. Ziling nodded. "It's so expensive, and many of us can't afford them. We can only order 1 portion of rice, and wash it down with the free soup. That's the only way we can sustain ourselves." Chaoga asked, "Why are you so broke? Xiao Wu and I only just got here, and we already have over 100 points. Ziling looked at her in resignation. "That's because our team was first, and only the top team can earn 100 points. The lower the ranking, the fewer points a team will earn. Teams ranked below 200 can't earn any points at all. That's how difficult it is to earn points. I'm the lucky one. I joined your team and earned the extra points. You guys stay in the line. I'll get us some soup." Ziling was going to fetch the free soup. "Isn't it Ziling? What a coincidence. Are you here for the free soup again?" It was Zhenya's voice. Zhenya was Lu Zhao's current girlfriend, and she had never tried to hide her resentment toward Ziling. Ziling's cheeks flushed with anger. She turned around and ignored Zhenya. But Zhenya didn't walk away. She was the type of girl who always clung to her boyfriend. She looked at Ziling, Feng Wu and Chaoga with contempt. Lu Xiao had always felt guilty about leaving Ziling, so he lowered his voice and asked, "Ziling, why don't you join us?" Hearing that, Zhenya glared at Ziling. Ziling had an indescribable look in her eyes when she shook her head at him. "That won't be necessary. Please leave." Chapter 2567 Untitled. Chapter 2567 Untitled. Ziling went back to her team and wouldn't look at Lu Xiao again. Zhenya let Lu Xiao go back to their table first. After he left, she went to Ziling's side with a smirk on her face and raised her hand. Thump! She slapped Ziling in the face. The sound attracted much attention. Feng Wu and Chaoga looked at each other, and both were infuriated. Zhenya had no idea that she had offended Feng Wu, She only stared at Ziling and said harshly, Ziling, I'm warning you. Lu Xiao is my boyfriend now. If you seduce him again, you'll get more than a slap to the face. She was ready to leave after that. But Chaoga stopped her. Zhenya glared at her. Be a good dog and get out of my way. Right. A good dog shouldn't get in the way. That makes you a bad dog. Chaoga then slapped Zhenya with much force. Smack. It was such a crisp sound. Chaoga had used much more force than when Zhenya slapped Ziling. As a result, Zhenya flew backward. Both her feet left the ground. Zhenya stared at Chaoga in disbelief. Chaoga had hit her. She was the daughter of the famous Jin family, and that girl had slapped her. Zhenya was dumbfounded. All eyes were on Chaoga. The new student was bold enough to mess with the daughter of the Jin family. Wait, a new student? Chaoga was a new student, and she was capable of striking Zhenya so hard that she was sent flying. Did that mean that she was more capable than Zhenya? Just then, Lu Xiao ran back from their table. He squeezed through the crowd and rushed to his girlfriend's side. Zhenya, are you alright? Zhenya burst into tears when she saw Lu Xiao, as if she had suffered the greatest injustice. Ziling told her friend to hit me. Zhenya's tears won her a lot of sympathy, and the mark on her face also proved that she had been hit hard. Lu Xiao glared at Ziling with eyes burning with fury. He shouted, Ziling, if you hate me, do whatever you want to me. Why did you hurt Zhenya? I'm so disappointed in you. He picked Zhenya up and carried her toward the infirmary. If anything happens to Zhenya, I'll make you pay. That was all Lu Xiao said. Feng Wu could see that Ziling was so angry that her legs almost gave out. She had clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Feng Wu also saw that Ziling was clutching her hands so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. Blood oozed out. What kind of hatred was that? Had someone threatened her, forcing her to endure this humiliation? Feng Wu shook her head. Let's go back. They went back to room 2001. Yihan hadn't shown her face ever since Feng Wu defeated her. As a result, there were only 3 people in the dormitory. Chaoga closed the door and asked Ziling, what on earth was that about? Ziling bit her lower lip, trying to force back her tears. Chaoga grew impatient. What's going on? Why is that Zhenya targeting you? And what's that Lu Xiao's problem? Why did he blame you? Just tell me. Feng Wu frowned. She could roughly guess what had happened, but it concerned Ziling's privacy. If she didn't want to say anything, Feng Wu didn't want to force her either. She only patted Ziling on the shoulder. It's okay to feel wronged. What's worse is when you're wronged and can't vent your frustration. Chapter 2568 Untitled. Chapter 2568 Untitled. Without an outlet, you won't have any motivation and can only go with the flow. With it, you can work from there and achieve something one day. Injustice isn't always a bad thing, but if you choose to remain silent afterward, that's the true tragedy. Feng Wu looked Ziling in the eye and said solemnly, I hope you can remember that indignation. But if you choose to look away, that's fine too. Feng Wu knew that she wouldn't think too highly of the girl if she chose to run away. Ziling closed her eyes. She had no idea that she was at a crossroad in her life. Nor did she know how her choice would change her life forever. She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and met Feng Wu's gaze. I'll tell you what happened. She chose not to be a silent victim. Her choice was appreciated. The story was straightforward. Lu Xiao and Ziling grew up together. Both came from families of scholars that were equal in social status. Therefore, they were betrothed to each other at a very young age, and were going to get married as soon as they were old enough. They went to school and cultivated together. Later, they entered Imperial College together, slowly making their way from year 1 to year 4. Zhenya showed up when they entered the War Academy. She was in love with Lu Xiao and courted him frantically. It was a messy process. Ziling said. Zhenya knew what she was doing. She slowly made friends with Lu Xiao. At first, she acted like a fangirl who was infatuated with him. She would ask him questions about schoolwork all the time, and Lu Xiao enjoyed it. I was angry when I found out about her, and demanded that Lu Xiao keep his distance. But Lu Xiao didn't understand it. He said that Zhenya was only a friend, and that I was being stingy. Gradually, Zhenya joined our team, and all my team members were on her side. I became an outcast. I tried to talk to Lu Xiao, but he said that his teammates found me too grumpy and too hard to please. Ziling grew angrier as she talked. I forced Lu Xiao to make a choice between me and her. It was one way or another. Lu Xiao chose me in the end and stopped seeing her. I was very happy, but there was despair in her voice now. 3 days later, I ran into them in Zhenya's room. They were lying naked in her bed. Ziling smiled bitterly. After that, Lu Xiao announced in front of everyone that our marriage arrangement was cancelled, and Zhenya became his girlfriend. Fengwu didn't know what to say. Chaoge said, "How could Zhenya say that you seduced Lu Xiao?" Ziling said, "I've been avoiding them since that incident. Zhenya is from an influential family. Her father is a tutor of Class E. You know that our chief tutor is Mr. Zhu, right?" Chaoge nodded. Ziling said, "Zhenya took her mother's family name. Her father is Mr. Zhu." Chaoge said, "What?" Ziling smiled bitterly. "Because of that, all the students in Class E fear her, including Sun Jingyu. It's only natural that the other students joined hands to isolate me." Chaoge said, "That's outrageous. Didn't Mr. Zhu say anything?" Ziling gave her a strange look. Chaoge said, "Did I say something wrong?" Ziling smirked. "Well, Mr. Zhu is." Chapter 2569 Untitled. Chapter 2569 Untitled. Ziling smirked. "I went to see Mr. Zhu about it, but he told me there was nothing he could do and sent me away." Chaoge said, "I can't believe it. What happened after that?" Ziling smiled bitterly. "Zhenya has been mocking me whenever she sees me and targets me every chance she gets. She becomes alarmed when she thinks I'm too close to Lu Xiao. That's why I've been trying to avoid them, but I can't stay unnoticed sometimes because Lu Xiao greets me all the time." She snorted. "I wish he'd never talk to me again since it always brings me trouble." Ziling turned to Chaoge and said apologetically, "I wouldn't have reacted like this if I were on my own, but I dragged the two of you into it. I really don't know what to do." Chaoge didn't feel that she should feel bad about hitting Zhenya, but she had indeed caused Fengwu trouble again. "Xiao Wu." Chaoge went to Fengwu's side, lowered her head, and asked gingerly, "I shouldn't have done that, right? Have I caused you trouble again?" Fengwu said sternly, "Are you only aware of that now?" Chaoge was lost for words. Fengwu said, "If you could choose, would you do it again?" Chaoge gritted her teeth and hesitated, but she still gave an honest answer. She nodded. "Although it's not right given the choice, I would do it again. Xiao Wu, I'm sorry, but I can't become the good student you want me to be." She burst into tears in the end. She had a feeling that Fengwu would give up on her. Fengwu chuckled. Chaoge was confused. Fengwu said in resignation, "You did the right thing." Chaoge was shocked. "What?" Fengwu said. "I said you did the right thing. Do you really take me for a coward? Am I someone who would compromise?" Chaoge said, "What do you mean?" Fengwu said, "I'll tell you the same thing that I told Ziling." Chaoge tried to recall what Fengwu said earlier. Fengwu said, "We all need to preserve our will and spirit. Without them, we're no different from fish. If someone insults you, insult them with worse things. If they hit you, hit them back right away. If you can't beat them, run away. Get stronger and then fight them again. Who told you that you have to swallow your grievances? Do you not understand why I scolded you before?" Chaoge said, "Xiao Wu, I." Fengwu waved her off. "You need to figure it out on your own. Until then, don't come to see me again." Chaoge was almost in tears and turned to Ziling for help. Ziling was as dumbfounded as she was. Fengwu left the dormitory and walked around the academy. She spent some points and listened to a few classes. After attending a lesson on cultivation theory, she worked out the average level of the other students here. She had learned under her beautiful master and was good enough to be a teacher here. She didn't need the theory class anymore. She enjoyed the course about surviving in the Thousand Night Forest. She hadn't handed in all the crystal cores. She only handed in 165 and had kept the rest for later use. Chapter 2570 Untitled. Chapter 2570, Untitled. She then went to the cultivation rooms. It was an interesting place. The 5 types of cultivation rooms each corresponded to metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. There were also rooms for auxiliary elements such as ice, frost, and thunder. Fengwu made some inquiries, and was told that students of Class E could only use Grade E rooms. She then chose the Grade E fire room. She entered it, and used the crystal cores for her cultivation. She noticed in surprise that her cultivation had doubled. When she used all the crystal cores that she had brought with her, the percentage rose to 8%. She needed 100% to become a real spiritual king. When she left the room, she was told that she had spent a small fortune. 100 points. She looked at the teacher in surprise. It was a middle-aged female teacher. Her face was expressionless, and her eyes were cold. She didn't look very friendly. She glanced at Fengwu and said lightly, 10 points an hour. You've used 10 hours. Fengwu frowned. She felt that the teacher was targeting her. She didn't think that she had met the teacher before. If you can't afford it, don't come again. The teacher glanced at Fengwu and said to the student behind her, next. There was a line behind Fengwu, and the students were all whispering. Zhuo Qingwan had targeted Fengwu from the very beginning. As a result, other students didn't fear Fengwu either. They even dared to discuss her in front of her. Who's she? Ms. Zhen is usually very nice. That's Fengwu, the one Chief Qingwan tried to pick in front of everyone. I see. That's Fengwu. By the looks of it, she's offended Ms. Zhen. Then she'll have a very hard time ahead of her. Cultivation rooms are the places we need most. Ms. Zhen glanced at Fengwu. Why are you still here? Fengwu smiled. I'll use another 10 hours. Ms. Zhen was surprised. Are you going to use up your points? Fengwu asked. Do you know me? Why do you know how many points I have? Ms. Zhen didn't answer, and only stared at Fengwu. Fengwu asked, can't I do that? Ms. Zhen smirked. Get back in line. She wanted to give Fengwu trouble. Fengwu glanced at her, and walked toward the cultivation room. Stop right there. Ms. Zhen felt humiliated and glared at Fengwu. Do you think you can go in just like that? Get back in line. Fengwu ignored her again. Stop. Infuriated Ms. Zhen tried to grab Fengwu's shoulder. The moment her fingers touched Fengwu grabbed her arm, and threw her over her shoulder. Thump. There was a loud noise. Everyone was shocked. They had never imagined that they would witness such a thing one day. A mere student had thrown a teacher over her shoulder. The teacher was Ms. Zhen, Mr. Zhu's wife. That's Ms. Zhen. She's Zhenya's mother. Chapter 2571 Untitled. Chapter 2571, Untitled. How dare Fengwu do such a thing? But we all know how capable Ms. Zhen is. Why was Fengwu able to throw her over her shoulder? Everyone was dumbfounded. Wasn't Fengwu supposed to be useless? How could she injure Ms. Zhen? Ms. Zhen was at a loss as well. It had never occurred to her that she would be humiliated this way. She had been defeated by a student. Driven by shame, she jumped up, bent her fingers so that her hands looked like claws, and aimed at Fengwu's eyes. Fengwu grabbed one of her hands. With a crack, she crushed Ms. Zhen's hand in her palm. Ah! Ms. Zhen screamed in pain. The students watched in astonishment. They thought that they had seen enough shocking things, but they were wrong. Fengwu is. Oh my God! Ms. Zhen is. Ms. Zhen stared at Fengwu with eyes that burned with hatred. Fengwu said, Get out of my way. Ms. Zhen hated Fengwu, but she didn't dare offend her again. Because Fengwu could crush her like she was stomping on an ant. She wasn't Fengwu's match at all. Overwhelmed by the humiliation, Ms. Zhen moved aside, and Fengwu marched into the fire room while everyone watched. The students were shocked once more. There were around a dozen students, and they all sucked in their breaths in unison. Zhenya's friends had slipped away to look for her. They couldn't find her, but they found Mr. Zhu instead. Feng Wu was cultivating when Mr. Zhu arrived. She realized that when she didn't have any crystal cores, her cultivation speed was greatly reduced. It seemed that she needed to earn more crystal cores and points. Just then, she heard footsteps outside. The students turned around and saw that it was Mr. Zhu. Their first thought was that Feng Wu was going to die. Holding her right arm, Ms. Jin greeted him. There was pain in her voice, but her eyes spat fire. Husband. Ms. Jin gritted her teeth. Apparently Mr. Zhu had been informed of what happened. He examined Ms. Jin's wound, and was slightly relieved when he saw that it wasn't too serious. Where's that student? His face was livid. She's cultivating inside. Ms. Jin pointed at the cultivation room. She was so furious that her eyes looked like they were spitting fire. The injury hurt, but she was more furious because she had been beaten by a student in front of other students. The humiliation almost drove her crazy. Mr. Zhu nodded and headed for the cultivation room. At that moment, four people arrived. They were Zhenya Luxiao, Sun Jingyu and Mu Qianqian. They all heard the conversation between the couple. Zhenya held her mother and shook with rage. Luxiao tried to comfort her. The students all murmured to one another and expressed how sorry they felt for Zhenya. They were convinced that Feng Wu was going to die. Was she? Sun Jingyu didn't think so. Mu Qianqian tugged at Sun Jingyu's sleeve and whispered, "Are we on the wrong side?" Sun Jingyu only rolled her eyes at Mu Qianqian. Chapter 2572. Untitled. Chapter 2572 Untitled. Mu Qianqian anxiously dropped her voice, so that no one else could hear her. Jingyu, I'm not joking. Feng Wu attacked Ms. Zhen. What do you think Mr. Zhu will do to her? Listen. They all think that she's going to die. Sun Jingyu glanced at Ms. Zhen's right hand and said casually, just because they all think that way doesn't mean that they're right. They're only repeating each other's words. Mu Qianqian stomped her foot. But Mr. Zhu is the most capable tutor of our class. Sun Jingyu thought, so what? I bet he can't kill 1,000 white lion elephants with one strike. Her legs still trembled whenever she recalled that scene. It chilled her to the bone. Mu Qianqian was trying to figure out how not to be incriminated by Feng Wu. Meanwhile, Mr. Zhu had arrived outside the fire room. He tried to push the door open. But it wasn't as easy as he expected. The door wouldn't open. He frowned, stepped back, and checked the sign in the top right corner of the door. Grade E Fire Cultivation Room 1. It was the right place. He grabbed the door handle and pushed harder. He used 80% of his maximum strength, and was confident that the door would open without resistance. He was wrong. The door still wouldn't budge. Mr. Zhu was concerned now. When he exerted his full power, he realized in surprise that he still couldn't open the door. He was astonished. He knew that this was a competition between his and Feng Wu's cultivation levels. What kind of student could keep him out? Dozens of students had gathered around, and they looked expectantly at Mr. Zhu. Thump. Infuriated Mr. Zhu raised a leg. He kicked the door open with a loud thump. This time, he finally could enter the room. How do you think Mr. Zhu will punish Feng Wu? She disrespected her teachers. They'll expel her, won't they? Zhenya smirked. My dad is going to kill her. Ms. Zhen gave her a stern look. What a stupid girl. She couldn't say such things out loud. While everyone else believed that Feng Wu was going to be punished, Sun Jingyu shook her head. From what she knew of Feng Wu, she believed that things wouldn't turn out the way these people expected. Feng Wu would prove them all wrong. Chaoga and Ziling got wind of the news, and arrived at that moment. Zhenya was furious when she saw Ziling. Ms. Zhen stopped her and said coldly, don't create more trouble now. Zhenya had to fight back her rage. In the fire room, Feng Wu sat cross-legged on the floor, and Mr. Zhu was kneeling in front of her. She said, get out of my sight now. Mr. Zhu scrambled to his feet. All his wounds were hidden by his clothes, and other people couldn't tell that he had been hurt. He wanted to leave the room. Feng Wu said sarcastically. You'll have to leave something behind. Mr. Zhu glared at her before he looked down at his hands. Which hand should he chop off? Feng Wu chuckled. The right one then. It's more valuable. Mr. Zhu glared at her. He had never imagined that something like this would happen to him. Chapter 2573. An Incredible Student 1. Chapter 2573. An Incredible Student 1. Feng Wu smiled at Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu glared at her in frustration. It had never occurred to him that there would be such an incredible student in his class. He had been confident when he came in, thinking that he would teach the student a good lesson. He had never imagined that it was possible he would lose. Not only that, he also realized in astonishment that he couldn't withstand a single strike. Not a single one. He was the class tutor, but he was easily defeated by one of his students. For an instant, he wished that the ground could open up so that he could hide inside. Feng Wu smiled at him. Have you decided? Mr. Zhu was a decisive man who kept his word. He grabbed his sword and struck down at his right arm. Before he could make contact, he was struck by an invisible force. The sword flew out of his hand and landed in the wall behind him. It was buried all the way to the hilt. Mr. Zhu's face paled. The walls of the cultivation room were made of a special material. Ordinary people couldn't leave any mark on it, let alone stick a sword into it. Even he couldn't do it. Feng Wu had only entered the academy for 2 days, and she could already plunge a sword into the wall. Exactly how capable was she? Why? Mr. Zhu stared at Feng Wu. Why did you stop me? Feng Wu smiled. I don't think it's worth the trouble. Mr. Zhu said what? Feng Wu said. Why do I need your right hand? I can't eat it. Mr. Zhu was speechless. Feng Wu smiled at him. Why don't you name a price? How much do you think your right arm is worth? Convert it into points and give them to me. Mr. Zhu was astonished. Are you sure you don't want me to? He was so agitated that he couldn't finish his sentence. Feng Wu waved him off and got straight to the point. I think you know that being a new student, I'm always in need of more points. Mr. Zhu asked. Aren't you afraid that I won't keep my promise? Feng Wu smiled a little and glanced at his right arm. She said teasingly, I can take that hand whenever I want. That was an outright threat. Mr. Zhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was such a unique student. He realized that a genius like Feng Wu couldn't stay in Class E for long. She would soon rise in glory. How many points do you need? He asked in resignation. Feng Wu said, I want to have unlimited access to the cultivation room. How about that? Mr. Zhu shook his head. That's not possible. Feng Wu asked him why. Mr. Zhu smiled bitterly. My authority only applies to Class E. Feng Wu said. In that case, give me unlimited access to this cultivation room while I'm in Class E. Mr. Zhu shook his head again. I can't do that. Feng Wu frowned. She felt that she had made enough compromises. Mr. Zhu shook his head. I'm not as powerful as you think. Even I have to pay with my points to use the cultivation room. Feng Wu asked seriously. Mr. Zhu nodded. The school has various rules to prevent the devaluation of points. This is one of them. Chapter 2574. An Incredible Student 2. Chapter 2574. An Incredible Student 2. Feng Wu said, If that's the case, Mr. Zhu, I think I'm gonna take that right arm now. Mr. Zhu was alarmed. The girl might seem harmless, but she was anything but. There are ways to get around that, Mr. Zhu said hurriedly. The maximum amount of points a Class E student can get in a transaction is 1,000 points. And that's what I'll give you. Feng Wu frowned and shook her head. That's too little. Mr. Zhu felt the same. But that was the school rule. What else could he do? The maximum transaction amount really is 1,000. Regardless of whether it's between students or students and teachers. Also, it can only be done for the same person once a month, Mr. Zhu said solemnly. It seemed he was telling the truth. Feng Wu said, I want 3,000 points. Compared with 3,000 points, Mr. Zhu obviously valued his arm more. Mr. Zhu didn't hesitate to nod. Of course. Feng Wu said. Would you please call Chaoge and Ziling in then? Mr. Zhu looked at her in resignation. He wondered why she wouldn't trust him. She had to make sure that he transferred the points right now. However, he wasn't in a position to make requests, so he opened the door and said, Duan Chaoge Ziling, please come in for a moment. The students outside had no idea what was happening in the room. They jumped when Mr. Zhu called out the names. But they soon saw what was going on. Duan Chaoge and Ziling are both Feng Wu's friends. Why does Mr. Zhu want them to go in? Oh my god. Did Mr. Zhu kill Feng Wu? Does he need them to collect the body? Despite their astonishment, they all discussed the matter with flickering eyes. Zhenya was pleased. She and her mother looked at each other, and both smiled in satisfaction. Mu Qianqian grew anxious. She grabbed Sun Jingyu's hand and said agitatedly, Jingyu. She also believed that Mr. Zhu had beaten Feng Wu to death. Sun Jingyu's face remained emotionless, but she grew doubtful as well. Had she made the wrong choice? She wondered if she really had seen Feng Wu's formidable strike. Chaoge and Ziling were both concerned about Feng Wu. When they heard Mr. Zhu, they ran into the room as fast as they could. They heard all the discussion around them. Was Feng Wu really dead? Gosh, they were shocked by what they saw. Feng Wu sat calmly on the floor with her legs crossed, and there was a cheerful look in her bright eyes. She seemed to be in control of the situation. Mr. Zhu was standing next to her, bowing slightly like a servant. He didn't dare to show any disrespect. Chaoge was speechless. Ziling didn't know what to say. What was going on? Switch on your armbands. Feng Wu smiled at them. Both Chaoge and Ziling were dumbfounded. Chaoge was used to following Feng Wu's orders, so she switched on her armband without asking questions. 1,000 points transferred, a robotic female voice announced. 1,000 points. Chaoge couldn't believe her ears. She looked at Feng Wu in pleasant surprise. Xiao Wu, what's going on? Chapter 2575, An Incredible Student 3. Chapter 2575, An Incredible Student 3. Chaoge was indescribably excited. Feng Wu didn't answer her, and only looked at Ziling. Ziling wasn't blind. She saw Chaoge receive 1,000 points. She switched on her armband without further prompting. 1,000 points transferred. The same robotic female voice rang out again. Ziling was grateful and said to Mr. Zhu, thank you so much. She bowed as she spoke. Mr. Zhu's face was livid. He looked at Feng Wu instead of Ziling. Feng Wu nodded. You can go now. Mr. Zhu left without looking back. Ziling and Chaoge opened their eyes wide in disbelief as they watched Mr. Zhu leave. What was going on? Why did it feel like Feng Wu was ordering Mr. Zhu around? Were they mistaken? Chaoge and Ziling turned around and looked at Feng Wu in unison, both filled with wonder. Feng Wu said, Let's go. Chaoge wanted to ask something, but there were too many people around them, so she followed Feng Wu without saying a word. Mr. Zhu quickly left the cultivation room. Many students were waiting outside. There had only been over a dozen of them at first, but when news got around, more students flooded in. Looking around, Mr. Zhu saw that the place was packed. There were at least hundreds of people. Mr. Zhu's face turned livid. Just then, Zhenya, his daughter, ran excitedly toward him. She blinked, unable to contain her excitement. Father, did you teach Feng Wu a lesson? I'll drag her out now. Mr. Zhu's face darkened even more. Drag her out? Why did she even think she could do that? Fearing that his ignorant daughter would offend Feng Wu again, he immediately said, Stop right there. He had never spoken so harshly before. Zhenya was dumbfounded. Mr. Zhu glared at her. Come with me. Now. He grabbed her arm and led her away from the crowd. But Zhenya wouldn't let him. She threw off his hand. I still have things to do. I'm not leaving. However, Mr. Zhu was worried that his daughter would upset Feng Wu, So he picked her up without hesitation and dragged her away. Ms. Jin knew him well and was suspicious of his reaction. She felt that something wasn't right, but she had no idea what. The students had no idea what happened. They believed Jinya and thought that Mr. Zhu had taught Feng Wu a lesson. They expected to see Feng Wu lying on the floor, covered in blood. Mr. Zhu must have called Chaoge and Ziling inside, so that they could carry Feng Wu out. Why haven't they carried Feng Wu out yet? Is she too severely injured? Could she have died at the scene? I don't think so. Mr. Zhu would have to take responsibility if that happens. I think she's badly wounded, that's all. Just then the door to the cultivation room opened. There we go. The students outside couldn't wait to see who would come out. They were already displeased when Feng Wu turned down the opportunity to become Zhuo Qingwan's friend. And then, Chapter 2576, An Incredible Student 4. Chapter 2576, An Incredible Student 4. Then, they believed that Feng Wu became the best team member because she was lucky enough to join Sun Jingyu's team, which gave her 200 points. Everyone was jealous of her. Of course they wouldn't like Feng Wu. They were looking forward to seeing what happened to her. However, they were shocked when they saw Feng Wu come out. She didn't look injured at all. She didn't even have a scratch on her. She was as pretty as ever. Her skin was as smooth as porcelain, and there were no wrinkles in her dress. It was obvious that she hadn't been beaten up. Mr. Zhu looked more like he was the one who had been beaten up. Everyone watched in surprise as Feng Wu walked out of the room with Ziling and Chaoge by her side. They left the room together. Ms. Zhen was so furious that her nails dug into her palms. Her eyes spat fire. She left without saying a word. She wasn't going to stop Feng Wu. Instead, she was going to ask Mr. Zhu what was going on. In room 2001, Chaoge and Ziling stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Ziling couldn't believe her ears. Chaoge found it much easier to believe Feng Wu. After all, she had been Feng Wu's friend long enough to know that such things could happen. She cut to the chase. Xiao Wu, you didn't beat up Mr. Zhu, did you? Ziling rolled her eyes at Chaoge. No, that's just ridiculous. Be reasonable. Feng Wu beat up Mr. Zhu. How could that happen? Feng Wu said, I did. Ziling's mouth fell open. Feng Wu said, I did just now. Ziling said, what did you do? Feng Wu said, he attacked me without saying a word. I parried his blow and sent him flying. That was it. She shrugged innocently. I didn't actually hit him. Chaoge was speechless. Ziling didn't know what to say. In the tutors' living quarters, the students could only live in the dormitories, whereas the teachers lived in villas. Mr. Zhu was the tutor of Class E and could only live in the outermost region. In the villa of the Zhus, Zhenya was yelling at her father. Why did you bring me home? Dad, do you know how important that was to me? Duan, Chaoge and Ziling were going to carry Feng Wu out. You don't get to see that every day. Feng Wu has been so outrageous. She's only a new student, but she thinks of herself as some big deal. If one didn't know better, they would think that she's a Class D student already. I have to see Feng Wu at her worst. I'll be able to mock her for it from now on. Dad, you don't know anything. She threw off Mr. Zhu's hand and headed for the door. Stop right there. Mr. Zhu had never sounded so angry before. It frightened Zhenya. Her father had never spoken to her that way before. Mr. Zhu stared at Zhenya and stressed each word. I'll disown you if you offend Feng Wu again. He meant it. Intimidated, Zhenya cringed. When she realized what her father had said, she burst into tears. Her father had always doted on her, and she had never been treated this way before. Why are you saying that? Zhenya cried. I'd like to know the answer as well, someone said angrily from the doorway. Chapter 2577 Genius Student 1. Chapter 2577 Genius Student 1. I'd like to know the answer as well, someone said angrily from the doorway. Mr. Zhu turned around and saw his wife charging into the room. her eyes shining brightly with fury. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Ms. Zhen walked up to her husband and looked him in the eye. Tell me why. Now. She glared at Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu looked from his wife to his daughter. He took a deep breath and slowly said, with everything that has happened, can't you see it? Feng Wu isn't useless by any standard. She's a genius. Zhenya smirked. Father, don't be ridiculous. Feng Wu is a genius. She might have been a genius once, but she lost her ability 5 years ago. Everyone knows that. She's completely crippled. Mr. Zhu said tauntingly, are you saying that your father was defeated by a cripple? Zhenya and Ms. Zhen's pupils contracted. They couldn't believe their ears. Father. Husband. Mr. Zhu took another deep breath. He breathed out, paused, and said, you heard me correctly. Feng Wu defeated me. Zhenya didn't know what to say. Mr. Zhu was speechless. The room was completely silent. It was as if the air had frozen. Mr. Zhu stared at Ms. Zhen. Avoid Feng Wu as much as you can when she goes to the cultivation room. If you can't avoid her, avoid any confrontation. Ms. Zhen wanted to say something, but Mr. Zhu cut her off. Don't treat her like a common student. She's a genius. The most brilliant kind. And you, Mr. Zhu turned to his daughter. Don't offend Feng Wu ever again. Remember, she's a genius, and she has every right to be arrogant. If you don't get in her way, she won't do anything to you either. But if you don't listen to my advice and you offend her, you'll be responsible for the consequences. I won't have anything to do with it. He left after giving that warning. Ms. Zhen and Zhenya were completely at a loss. What was wrong with this world? How could Feng Wu be a genius? Meanwhile, in room 2001, Ziling would check her 1,000 points from time to time and be as happy as a little mouse. Chowga said, Ziling, stop giggling. You look silly. Ziling said, you have no idea how hard it is to earn points. I've never had more than 100 points, but now, I have 1,000. I want to show off to the entire school. Chowga said, try to keep a low profile. Ziling said, but it's so hard. Xiao Wu is obviously a genius, but they're calling her useless. It makes me so mad. Chowga shrugged. Xiao Wu was humble that way, and there was nothing they could do. Ziling asked, by the way, another event is coming up. Can I join your team again? Chowga said, of course you can. Chapter 2578 Genius Student 2. Chapter 2578 Genius Student 2. The students gathered in the same square for the next event. Sun Jingyu knew how capable Feng Wu was now, so she went straight to her. When she arrived, she saw that someone had beaten her to it. Zhenya and Lu Xiao were there already, and Zhenya spoke in a condescending tone. Feng Wu, we're on your team this time. Her father had given her a warning. Therefore, she wanted to check if Feng Wu really was the genius that she was said to be. However, she shouldn't have brought Lu Xiao with her, nor should she be using that condescending tone. Feng Wu ignored her, and Chowga simply said, no, you're not. Zhenya was furious. She was the princess of Class E, but they turned her down. She stared at Ziling. What do you say? Her father had warned her not to offend Feng Wu, and she revered him. Because of that, she only dared to confront Chowga and Zhenya. Having talked to Feng Wu, Ziling had let go a little. After learning that Mr. Zhu was weaker than Feng Wu, she didn't fear Mr. Zhu as much. As a result, she had become much more confident. She glanced at Zhenya before turning away, showing no intention to talk to the girl. Zhenya was infuriated. Zhenya, don't be upset. It's just a team. Pacey arrived with her friends. She smiled at Feng Wu and asked, Feng Wu, would you like to form a team with us? Behind her were Gu Xingyuan and Chu Junying. Sun Jingyu was about to approach Feng Wu, when Mu Qianqian grabbed her hand and whispered, Jingyu, Wang Junwen sent us a warning. She's forbidding us from joining Feng Wu's team this time. Sun Jingyu gave her a suspicious look. Mu Qianqian smiled bitterly. Jingyu, Wang Junwen is from Class D. You know how well connected she is. Sun Jingyu took a deep breath. Without any background, one wouldn't have a voice even if they were the top student of Class E. They decided that they should stay out of it. However, Sun Jingyu glanced at Pei Si and Zhenya and smirked. Did Pei Si think she could kill Feng Wu? How naive. Feng Wu glanced at Pei Si. We don't need so many people. Pei Si smiled at Zhenya. How about Zhenya and I join your team? Feng Wu didn't say no. Hence, a new team was created. The team consisted of Feng Wu, Chaoge, Ziling, Pei Si and Zhenya. Sun Jingyu quickly formed a team as well. It was Mu Qianqian and herself at first. Then Yuan Yu and Gu Xingyuan volunteered to join as well. As a result, Chu Junying joined them as well. The other students teamed up as well. Mr. Luo was still the one giving out the task. He glanced at Feng Wu as he spoke, and the look in his eyes was cold and merciless. Feng Wu was a little perplexed. She didn't think she had offended Mr. Luo. Why the attitude? Ziling leaned over and whispered in Feng Wu's ear. I heard that Mr. Luo used to have a crush on Ms. Zhen, and you offended Ms. Zhen yesterday. So, Feng Wu was speechless. Even the husband had given up. Why would Mr. Luo try to pick on her? Interesting. Chapter 2579 Genius Student 3. Chapter 2579 Genius Student 3. Feng Wu glanced at Zhenya, and Zhenya looked back at her, seemingly pleased with herself. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Why was she so pleased? Zhenya smirked inwardly. She had gone to Mr. Luo's house and complained to him in tears, making it sound like her mom had been through hell. She decided that if her father wouldn't do anything to Feng Wu, someone else would. The event was still taking place in Thousand Night Forest, and they were still going to hunt some magical beasts. Usually, these events were all about hunting white lion elephants, which had been annihilated by Feng Wu. After an emergency meeting, the tutors decided that the students would hunt nether wolf tigers this time. It was a magical beast with the head of a wolf and the body of a tiger. They were as powerful as tigers but as cunning as wolves, which made them very difficult to hunt. The points the students would receive stayed the same. So did the rules. Pei Si walked at the very front. She turned around and smiled at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, I heard that you were the one who killed all those white lion elephants last time. Chaoge had let it slip when the others pushed her too hard. Feng Wu didn't stop her from telling others, nor was she deliberately hiding her capability. People just didn't believe her. Zhenya smirked. It seemed that Pei Si, the second best student in Class E, didn't like Feng Wu either. What great news. Pei Si pondered. Wang Junwen had given her a mission with a reward of 500 points. It was rather straightforward. She needed to injure Feng Wu to the point that she needed to stay in bed for at least 3 months. Pei Si didn't find the task difficult. After all, she was the second best student in Class E, and should be able to overpower Feng Wu, the new student. The problem was how to make it look like an accident. After some consideration, Pei Si decided to use the nether wolf tigers. What she didn't know was that Sun Jingyu had tried something similar once, and had failed miserably. Pei Si's ignorance gave her confidence. She smiled at Feng Wu when the first nether wolf tiger appeared. Feng Wu, would you like to give it a go? Feng Wu glanced at her and struck out without hesitation. She used her bare hands. With a thump, the nether wolf tiger was sent flying, and made a muffled sound when its giant body hit the ground. Pei Si's eyes widened, and she stared at Feng Wu. That was fast. Chaoge and Ziling approached the nether wolf tiger when Feng Wu was done. They knew what to do. One opened the nether wolf tiger's head, and removed the crystal core. The other skinned the beast. The whole process took less than 3 seconds. Pei Si was speechless. She tried to convince herself that she couldn't trust her eyes. Either that or the nether wolf tiger was too weak. Magical beasts were divided into different levels as well, and this one had to be one of the weaker ones. Sun Jingyu and her team were shadowing Feng Wu's team without getting too close. Through the gaps between branches, they saw how Feng Wu killed the nether wolf tiger with one strike. Sun Jingyu said to her teammates, "See? I told you Feng Wu was good. Gu Xingyuan's face darkened. It was just one beast. Chapter 2580 Genius Student 4. Chapter 2580 Genius Student 4. Gu Xingyuan smirked inwardly. It was just one nether wolf tiger. Why were they so excited? Gu Xingyuan couldn't stand the way Sun Jingyu worshipped Feng Wu, so he said coldly, "We'll go in a different direction." But Sun Jingyu wouldn't have it. Becoming the MVP of this event wasn't her aim. With Feng Wu around, she couldn't be the MVP even if she wanted to. Sun Jingyu was here to see how Feng Wu defeated Pei Si. Therefore, she immediately turned down Gu Xingyuan's suggestion. Why should we? I think following Feng Wu's team is a great idea. Gu Xingyuan said coldly. Don't you want to be first? Sun Jingyu found the question idiotic. Me? First? Chu Junying asked. What's wrong with that? Didn't everyone want to be first? Sun Jingyu responded with a sneer. With Feng Wu here, who else can be first? Gu Xingyuan's face turned even darker. He walked away without saying a word. Chu Junying threw a dirty look at Sun Jingyu and followed Gu Xingyuan. Mu Qianqian tugged at Sun Jingyu's sleeve and sounded concerned. Jingyu, I heard that Gu Xingyuan is frighteningly capable. Sun Jingyu was speechless. He can't be more frightening than Feng Wu. Don't worry. He'll never be Feng Wu's match. Mu Qianqian stomped her foot. Jingyu, Gu Xingyuan is on our team. Don't you want to be first? Sun Jingyu gave her a strange look. Wanting it is very far from getting it. Before Mu Qianqian could say anything, Sun Jingyu said, You won't be disappointed if you don't have any expectations. You'd better give up that idea because you're bound to be disappointed. The memory of Feng Wu killing the white lion elephants was still fresh in her mind. That scene would probably stick with her forever. Mu Qianqian wasn't convinced. She turned around and watched Feng Wu's team through the gaps in the branches. She wanted to see exactly how capable Feng Wu was. Meanwhile, Feng Wu's team ran into some nether wolf tigers again. There were two of them. Zhenya was about to attack when Pei Si stopped her. She shook her head at Zhenya and gestured in Feng Wu's direction. Zhenya took the hint. The two girls smiled at each other with vicious looks in their eyes. Pei Si spoke again. Feng Wu, since you're so capable, why don't you take care of these two as well? Feng Wu didn't give her so much as a glance before she raised her fists. Thump. There were two loud thumps. The two nether wolf tigers were sent flying and fell to the ground. It only took her one strike. Pei Si was speechless. Zhenya didn't know what to say. They looked at each other and couldn't believe their eyes. No, Feng Wu couldn't be that powerful. Something had to be wrong. According to Mr. Luo, nether wolf tigers were as fierce as white lion elephants. How could she kill them so easily? These two beasts had to be the weakest ones. That was Pei Si's thought. Wang Junwen had told her where she could find large packs of nether wolf tigers. She didn't think she would need them, but now. Chapter 2581. Let's begin 1. Chapter 2581. Let's begin 1. They ran into 5 more nether wolf tigers as they marched on, and Feng Wu took care of all of them. She never needed more than one strike. Pei Si and Zhenya grew uneasy. They looked at each other more and more often. Zhenya wouldn't accept reality. She slipped away and found a nether wolf tiger herself. She wanted to know if they were as weak as she assumed. She learned the answer the hard way. They were anything but weak. She had to give all she had just to hold off the nether wolf tiger, and it ran away in the end. It was such a powerful beast. Zhenya saw Feng Wu in a different light when she returned. As usual, Feng Wu killed nether wolf tigers, and Chaoga and Ziling took care of the crystal cores and the skinning of the beasts. While they were away, Zhenya led Pei Si to the side. Pei Si, tell me the truth. Are you going after Feng Wu? Pei Si looked at Zhenya suspiciously. Zhenya gritted her teeth. Not only did Feng Wu injure my mom, she humiliated her as well. I must have my revenge. Pei Si suddenly smiled. Is that so? I don't have anything against Feng Wu though. She was very careful. Although the enemy of an enemy was a friend, She still didn't reveal the task which Wang Junwen had given to her. Zhenya smirked and believed that they had a tacit understanding. You should stay away from the place we're about to go next, Pacey hinted to Zhenya. Given Zhenya's background, things would become complicated if Mr. Zhu learned what happened. Therefore, Pacey tried to send Zhenya away. She thought she would need to do some convincing, but to her surprise, Zhenya agreed at once. Pacey gave Feng Wu a taunting look after Zhenya left. I was going to put you in bed for 3 months, but since you won't cooperate, I won't be so civil anymore. At that thought, Pacey smiled at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, you're amazing. I'm sure we'll become the top team. You're absolutely fantastic. She clapped her hands in excitement. Feng Wu watched her in silence. Chaoga shook her head. Ziling didn't say a word either. Pacey couldn't smile anymore. Somehow she felt foolish. She cleared her throat to cover her embarrassment and led the way. She thought, that mysterious tutor helped you kill all those white lion elephants, and you took advantage of that. That stupid Duan Chaoga told the others that you killed thousands of white lion elephants on your own. Ha! Pacey smirked inwardly. She was going to lead the others to a pack of nether wolf tigers. No tutor will come to save you this time. You can't be lucky all the time. Pacey thought that she had hidden her intention well, but she didn't know that this was the second time that Feng Wu had experienced such a thing. She could figure it out without any difficulty. While Pacey was leading the way, the others exchanged looks. Chaoga wondered how stupid Pacey could be. Ziling didn't know what to say. Before, she had always revered Sun Jingyu and Pacey, the top 2 students in her class. However, she was disillusioned when she saw the other side of Sun Jingyu. Now it was Pacey's turn. Maybe Pacey wasn't as foolish as she seemed? Ziling wouldn't give up hope yet. However, Chapter 2582. Let's begin too. Chapter 2582. Let's begin too. However, Pacey soon proved that Ziling shouldn't have had any faith in her. She led the team to a pack of nether wolf tigers. There were 100 of them. Pacey smiled at Feng Wu. Since you're so amazing, why don't you take care of them all? She backed away after that. She expected that Chaoga would scold her. After all, she was trying to get Feng Wu killed. To her surprise, Chaoga didn't say anything, nor did Ziling. Feng Wu didn't even look in her direction. She had done such a horrible thing, but no one said anything. Pacey was still wondering what was happening when Feng Wu struck out. This time she finally drew out her sword. Fallen Star Sword first stance, and it was all she needed. Thump, thump, thump. The heads of all 100 nether wolf tigers exploded. Pacey was astonished, but Chaoga wasn't. She took out a large sack and told Ziling to hold the other end of the opening. They made sure that the sack stayed wide open. Whoosh! The crystal cores flew out of the exploded heads and into the sack. Soon, the sack was filled with crystal cores. Pacey was astonished. She stood there frozen. She looked like she had been struck by lightning. She couldn't think straight. That was too hard to believe. She opened her mouth but no sound would come out. How was that possible? Wasn't Feng Wu supposed to be useless? Didn't Feng Wu get into the War Academy because she was well connected? What was going on? It only took her one strike to blow up 100 heads. How did the crystal cores fly out? And it wasn't just that. How did they fly accurately into that sack? Pacey didn't know if she was crazy or blind. She was befuddled. Hence. So those 1000 beasts, Pacey felt like crying. It was you, wasn't it? Feng Wu remained perfectly calm. She couldn't understand why Pacey was so agitated. Chaoga smiled at Pacey. That's right. It was Xiaowu. Didn't I tell you so? Pacey was astonished. Yes, Chaoga had, but Pacey hadn't believed her. No one had. Pacey wasn't the only one who was astonished. Sun Jingyu looked at Mu Qianqian smugly. See? I told you. Feng Wu is a genius. There's no one like her. Mu Qianqian was completely dumbfounded. Oh my God. She covered her mouth and couldn't believe her eyes. She pointed at Feng Wu. Sun Jingyu was pleased. You saw correctly. The world hasn't fallen apart. Feng Wu is that capable. She knew that Feng Wu was even more capable than she looked. Sun Jingyu smiled inwardly as she studied the look on Mu Qianqian's face. Just then. Chapter 2583. Let's begin 3. Chapter 2583. Let's begin 3. Just then. A shadow jumped at Feng Wu. The energy he exerted was like a tidal wave. It was terrifying. Sun Jingyu was astonished and froze on the spot. She wasn't alone. Even Pei Si, who was more capable than she was, forgot to react. She just stood there. The speed was terrifying. Who was this man in black? The man ignored everyone else. Feng Wu was his only target. A short distance away, Zhenya hid behind an old tree with a smirk on her face. Feng Wu, you're going to die. I bet you didn't see that coming, being killed by Mr. Luo. Yes, Zhenya had gone to Mr. Luo for help. He had always liked Ms. Zhen, and had been furious when he heard Zhenya's story. But as a teacher, he couldn't openly assassinate a student. Therefore, he put on the black costume and covered his face with a black scarf before he attacked Feng Wu. He believed that Feng Wu was a weakling, and that he could finish her off without breaking a sweat. But he was surprised by how capable Feng Wu was. Feng Wu took action before Mr. Luo could lay a finger on her. No one saw how she did it. They only saw her reach out with her sword. Whoosh! The man's throat was cut open and blood gushed out. The man opened his eyes in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he was going to die like this. Ah! Zhenya screamed at the top of her lungs. That was Mr. Luo. She had invited him to take part in this mission. And he was Feng Wu even human? That was so frightening. Scared out of her wits, Zhenya turned around and sprang off, fearing that she might become the next target. She stumbled and fell, but she immediately got up and kept running down the mountain. Feng Wu frowned at the man. She had recognized the person as soon as he showed up. She could have killed Mr. Luo instantly, but she chose not to. Doing that would create too much trouble. It wasn't something she couldn't resolve, but it would take more time. Compared with that, she would rather have Mr. Luo suffer and wish that he was dead. Who's he? Who's this man? Pei Si finally came to her senses. Blood was still gushing out of the man's neck when she ripped the black scarf off his face. She was dumbfounded when she saw his face. OMG, how could it be? Mr. Luo covered the wound on his neck, gave Feng Wu a dirty look, and walked away after glancing in Pei Si's direction. Pei Si said, She couldn't form a coherent sentence. It took her a long while to calm down. She stared at Feng Wu and asked, Was that really Mr. Luo? Feng Wu glanced at her. You're mistaken. Pei Si said, No, I'm not. That was obviously. Feng Wu said, We only have a Mr. Luo who resigned. We don't have a Mr. Luo who attempted to kill his student. Chapter 2584. Let's begin 4. Chapter 2584. Let's begin 4. Pei Si was smart and immediately took the hint. If she hadn't removed the black scarf and exposed Mr. Luo, maybe he could. Pei Si was frustrated. She felt that it was all her fault. Feng Wu looked at her and said casually, If you hadn't done that, he would have died. Pei Si didn't understand at first. But she soon realized what Feng Wu meant. Because of that, her pupils contracted. Feng Wu had made it very clear. She had wanted to kill Mr. Luo, but she decided to expose him instead, which was worse than death. How did you know that I would remove his? Pei Si was bewildered. Feng Wu said in resignation, You're not the only person here. Pei Si realized that all her frustration was for nothing. Something struck Pei Si, and she stared at Feng Wu again. Wait, you defeated Mr. Luo with one strike. What level are you now? She felt uneasy. Feng Wu looked at her and shook her head. Pei Si immediately turned from a proud princess to a fangirl. She caught up with Feng Wu and asked, Hey, tell me, what level are you now? Feng Wu said indifferently, Go away. Pei Si seemed wounded. Xiaoge was speechless. Pei Si was the one who had tried to kill Xiao Wu. But why was she behaving like someone who had been mistreated? Sun Jingyu saw Pei Si flitting around with her head lowered. A person's enemy was usually the person who understood them the best. Sun Jingyu had been competing with Pei Si long enough to know her well. She realized that Pei Si was trying to jump onto Feng Wu's wagon. That wouldn't do. Jingyu, what are you doing? Mu Qianqian grabbed her arm when she saw that Sun Jingyu was walking toward Feng Wu. I need to befriend Feng Wu. I can't let Pei Si beat me to it. Sun Jingyu pushed her away and ran faster. Pei Si was alarmed when she saw her archenemy running toward her. Sun Jingyu pointed at Pei Si and said loudly, Feng Wu, Pei Si is trying to kill you. Pei Si stared at Sun Jingyu in disbelief. She had betrayed her. She glared at Sun Jingyu and said in a warning tone, That's outright slander. Sun Jingyu smirked. Are you saying that you didn't accept the mission to kill Feng Wu? If that's not the case, you wouldn't have teamed up with her. Can you swear that you're completely innocent? Pei Si was astonished. Sun Jingyu, she decided that she would reciprocate. Sun Jingyu, don't talk like you didn't try it before. You're not innocent either. Pei Si didn't see it coming. That's right. I did accept that mission once. But I told Feng Wu about it already. What about you? If I hadn't exposed you, were you going to try again? Pei Si thought, how am I supposed to do that? Had they not seen what happened to Mr. Luo? She only wanted more points, not death. After Mr. Luo ran away, Pei Si gave up the idea completely. Right now, she was only trying to fawn on Feng Wu. Feng Wu, Xiaoge and Ziling sat on the ground and watched how Sun Jingyu and Pei Si aired each other's dirty laundry. Chapter 2585, Feng Wu on the Move 1. Chapter 2585, Feng Wu on the Move 1. Feng Wu, Xiaoge and Ziling sat on the ground and watched how Sun Jingyu and Pei Si aired each other's dirty laundry. It was like they were enjoying a show. Feng Wu then heard the name Wang Junwen. Hold on. Feng Wu cut them off. Who's Wang Junwen? Sun Jingyu and Pei Si gave each other astonished looks. They had revealed the identity of their employer when they were shouting at each other. That was against the rule. It was supposed to be a secret. Sun Jingyu and Pei Si looked at each other again and saw what the other person was thinking. They both knew that if they didn't come clean, the other person would do so just to please Feng Wu. Therefore, they said in unison, That's Wang Junwen of Class D. Feng Wu rose to her feet. Xiaoge did the same. Sun Jingyu and Pei Si were perplexed. Where was Feng Wu going? Sun Jingyu tugged at Ziling. What's Feng Wu? Ziling lifted her dress so that the hem didn't touch the ground. I have no idea, but we'll know if we follow her. She ran after Feng Wu. Sun Jingyu and Pei Si exchanged looks. Because of the grudges they held against each other, they snorted, but still sprang off toward Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, where are you going? Let me show you the way. Sun Jingyu pushed Ziling away and ran next to Feng Wu. Pei Si wouldn't be left behind. She also caught up with Feng Wu and pushed Xiaoge out of the way. Xiao Wu, I know the school grounds well. If you're looking for someone, I know where to find them. Feng Wu smiled mockingly. Take me to Wang Junwen. What? Both Pei Si and Sun Jingyu stopped when they heard that. Wang Junwen. Teach this. Pei Si didn't dare say another word, nor did she dare follow Feng Wu. She quietly left the team. Sun Jingyu smiled awkwardly. Xiao Wu, I don't think I should go with you either. Feng Wu gave her a knowing look. Sun Jingyu blushed. I apologize for what I did to you before. That was so ignorant of me. I'm sorry. I won't bother you again. She wanted to leave after that. Feng Wu smiled at her. Did I say that you could leave? Sun Jingyu stared at her. Feng Wu chuckled. You can only leave when I tell you so. Do you think you can leave just because you want to? Sun Jingyu wanted to retort, but she thought about Feng Wu's capability and decided that she shouldn't say anything. And you, Pei Si, Feng Wu said quietly before Pei Si ran out of sight. You can leave. That's okay. As long as you don't regret it in the future. Pei Si froze on the spot. What did Feng Wu mean by that? She was obviously threatening her. Pacey didn't want to give in, but she recalled the way Feng Wu had killed all the nether wolf tigers, and the fact that Mr. Luo had been defeated in a single strike. She was scared. She walked back to Feng Wu with her head lowered and said gingerly, "I can go with you, but don't make me confront Wang Junwen." Feng Wu glanced at her, but didn't say anything. She kept on walking with no expression on her face. Sun Jingyu and Pacey followed her, both looking depressed. Chapter 2586, Feng Wu on the Move 2. Chapter 2586, Feng Wu on the Move 2. Chaoge was excited about going to see Wang Junwen. Ziling was excited as well, but she felt uneasy at the same time. Class D. They were having seminars in groups of 100 students. Feng Wu asked around, and when she learned that Wang Junwen was in the fire element class, she headed straight for the classroom. Seeing that Feng Wu was going to charge into the classroom, Ziling stopped her. "Xiao Wu, what are you doing?" Feng Wu said, "I'm looking for someone." Ziling said, "If you're looking for Wang Junwen, why don't we wait until the class is over? I don't think we should make a scene, right?" Feng Wu smirked. The louder the noise, the better. However, it seemed luck was on Wang Junwen's side. The bell rang at that moment, and the class was over. The tutor left with books under his arm, and students came out one by one. There were over 10 classes, each containing over 100 students. Wang Junwen came out, chatting merrily with her classmates. She smiled at Ding Yi. "Don't worry. The person you hate, you'll never see her again." Ding Yi was surprised. "You're not talking about?" Wang Junwen raised her chin. "You know who it is, but don't say the name out loud." Ding Yi grabbed Wang Junwen's hand excitedly. "Did you send someone to do the job?" Wang Junwen said proudly, "Of course I did." Ding Yi was pleasantly surprised. "It must have cost you a fortune. Who did you send?" Wang Junwen said, "Who else could it be? The problem belongs to Class E, so someone from Class E should solve it. Did you think I would do it myself? They're too petty to be worth my attention." Ding Yi said, "You really are a girl of action. I almost feel sorry for Feng Wu. After this, Miss Qingwan will think so highly of you. She still doesn't have a disciple yet, and you." Ding Yi felt sorry for herself now. "If I had known, I would have done it myself." Wang Junwen feigned a modest tone. "I just don't like her. It has nothing to do with Miss Qingwan. I didn't do it to become her disciple." Ding Yi smirked inwardly and thought, "You liar. You would never try so hard otherwise." 3 male students were with them as well. The 5 of them usually worked as a team, so they came to classes together as well. The 3 boys were Yu Hong, Tang Ziqiu and Sikong Wenming. Yu Hong was secretly in love with Wang Junwen, but he didn't dare express his feelings, so he only hovered around Wang Junwen all the time. Tang Ziqiu and Sikong Wenming were Yu Hong's good friends, so they were happy to hang out with the group. They listened to Wang Junwen and Ding Yi's conversation. Although the girls didn't make it very explicit, the boys could roughly figure out what the 2 girls were talking about. Yu Hong frowned at Wang Junwen. "Did you hire someone to go after Feng Wu?" Wang Junwen knew about his secret crush on her, but she pretended that she didn't know. However, she kept using Yu Hong's affections for her. She glanced at Yu Hong. "Tell me, are you on my side? Will you support me no matter what?" Yu Hong said, "Of course. You don't need to ask that question." Wang Junwen glanced at Ding Yi. She was pleased with what she had achieved. Ding Yi gritted her teeth in frustration. Chapter 2587, Feng Wu on the Move 3. Chapter 2587, Feng Wu on the Move 3. Wang Junwen was better looking than she was, and the guys all liked her. It was as if nothing bad could happen to her. Ding Yi angrily cursed Wang Junwen in her head. Then they heard a voice. "Wang Junwen, come out." That voice. The class had just ended, and hundreds of students were still in the courtyard. They all looked in the direction of the front gate. There was no one there. The students were amazed. "Who is it?" Wang Junwen frowned, startled by the voice. It sounded like a thunderclap in her ears, and made her jump. She let out a breath of relief when she didn't find anyone at the front gate. The next second, A person dressed all in red appeared at the entrance. Everyone cried out when they saw who it was. Isn't that Feng Wu? Because of what Zhuo Qinghuan had done on the first day of school, almost every student in the War Academy knew what Feng Wu looked like. If it were anyone else, they probably would have forgotten her face right away. But Feng Wu was different. She was too beautiful to forget. It's you! Wang Junwen stared at Feng Wu, her face darkening. Feng Wu looked past Wang Junwen and spoke to the crowd behind her. Wang Junwen, come out. Wang Junwen's face went pale with fury. She was standing right in front of Feng Wu, but the latter acted as if she wasn't there. She was even looking at the other students. Wang Junwen believed that Feng Wu was ignoring her on purpose. She stepped out and glared at Feng Wu. I'm Wang Junwen. As soon as she said that, Feng Wu charged at her like a gust of wind. Smack! She slapped Wang Junwen in the face. Wang Junwen was stunned for a moment, along with everyone else. Realizing what had happened, she shouted at Feng Wu. I'm going to kill you. She jumped at Feng Wu. There was a sharp sword in her hand, and she aimed at Feng Wu's forehead. It was her most lethal move. Her classmates gave Feng Wu sympathetic looks. They believed that Feng Wu really was going to die. When a student of Class E came to provoke a student of Class D, she had it coming when she got killed. Yu Hong and the others watched as Wang Junwen charged at Feng Wu. The tip of Wang Junwen's sword was only a centimeter away from Feng Wu. Feng Wu turned around and kicked the hilt of the sword. The sword spun around in midair, and the blade landed on Wang Junwen's neck. There was the sound of metal cutting flesh. Whoosh! Blood gushed out. Everyone sucked in their breaths. OMG! They stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. They couldn't believe their eyes. One stance. That was all Feng Wu needed. She was a new student. And she was from Class E. Yu Hong immediately ran to Wang Junwen and caught her before she fell to the ground. Junwen! Junwen! Yu Hong cried out. Everyone looked at Wang Junwen. Blood was gushing out of the wound in her neck. She wouldn't stop bleeding. Was Wang Junwen going to die? Did Feng Wu just kill Wang Junwen with a single strike? Chapter 2588, Feng Wu on the Move 4. Chapter 2588, Feng Wu on the Move 4. Yu Hong stared at Feng Wu with a murderous look in his eyes. You killed her. I'm gonna kill you. He let go of Wang Junwen and charged at Feng Wu like an angry beast. Something happened when he was half a meter away from Feng Wu. There was a loud thump. Feng Wu kicked him away. Everyone was speechless. When Feng Wu defeated Wang Junwen, some students thought that it was dumb luck. However, they couldn't say that when she defeated Yu Hong with a single strike again. Feng Wu had formidable power, and had used it to defeat Wang Junwen and Yu Hong. The students of Class D wondered what was going on. They all felt humiliated. In their vocabulary, Class E was synonymous with weaklings. Lu Yi was the student in charge of the students taking part in this particular seminar. She frowned at Feng Wu. She didn't take action, because she didn't know if she could defeat Feng Wu. Why? Lu Yi's face was livid. Why did you attack Wang Junwen? Feng Wu only glanced at her before walking away. Just like that. All the students of Class D watched in disbelief. How could she leave like that? Sun Jingyu and Pacey exchanged looks, both feeling lucky to have escaped death. They thought that Feng Wu had brought them here to prove that Wang Junwen had hired someone to kill her. To their surprise, Feng Wu didn't say a word before she left without hesitation. They went back to Class E. By then, everyone had come back to hand in their crystal cores. Sun Jingyu smacked her forehead. How could she have forgotten about the task? She turned around to look at the enigmatic Feng Wu. She made a mental note that she should never offend Feng Wu. Gu Xingyuan came back, followed by Chu Junying. Gu Xingyuan gave Sun Jingyu an arrogant glance when he walked past her. Chu Junying showed off the bag of crystal cores in front of Sun Jingyu, because Sun Jingyu had said that with Feng Wu around, no one else could become the MVP. To Chu Junying and Gu Xingyuan's disappointment, Sun Jingyu paid no attention to their bag of crystal cores. Her head was lowered, and her mind was elsewhere. Feng Wu's team was nearby, so Chu Junying tried to strike up a conversation. They had been on the same team before, so Chu Junying knew Pei Si relatively well. She asked deliberately, "Why are you back so early? I bet Feng Wu found a lot of crystal cores for you." Only then did Pei Si remember that they were supposed to collect crystal cores. She scratched her head and smiled awkwardly. Well, Chu Junying thought she was embarrassed because they hadn't found many crystal cores. So she said, "I heard that Feng Wu killed over 1,000 white lion elephants all by herself last time. That was amazing. Did she do that again?" Pei Si thought, "I don't know exactly what level Feng Wu is, but..." She struck down Wang Junwen, who's much better than I am, with a single blow. It'll take her even less effort to deal with me. The idea made Pei Si even more depressed, and she looked crestfallen. Chu Junying was secretly elated when she saw this, but she didn't let her face betray her. She went back to Gu Xingyuan and whispered, "We're definitely going to win this time." Gu Xingyuan snorted. Chapter 2589, Feng Wu on the Move 5. Chapter 2589, Feng Wu on the Move 5. Gu Xingyuan snorted. He believed that Feng Wu was nowhere close to his level. Once the process of handing in the crystal cores started, everyone was curious as to who the top student would be. Many students believed that since Sun Jingyu and Gu Xingyuan were both in Team 1, it was only natural that their team would come in first. Some people didn't agree because they heard that Feng Wu had killed 1,000 white lion elephants in one go. Some of them were stubborn enough to believe that Feng Wu could still be the MVP. They were still arguing when the results came out. Team 1 really became the top team, and Gu Xingyuan was the best team member. "I was right. Jingyu's team is the best. I told you Gu Xingyuan is good, but you wouldn't listen. Who's the joke now? I can't believe that people expected Feng Wu to be first. How ridiculous." The hilarious part is that someone actually believed that she killed 1,000 white lion elephants. I can't believe that Feng Wu, the mysterious tutor, killed the white lion elephants, but she tried to take the credit? Everyone was discussing it actively. Sun Jingyu was awfully quiet, and Chu Junying glanced at their class president and team leader displeased. Why is she like that? She took advantage of us. Xingyuan was the one who killed all the nether wolf tigers. She has no idea how much work he had to do. Chu Junying grumpily jabbed Sun Jingyu in the arm. Hey, you should collect the points now. Right. Sun Jingyu woke up from her reverie and sighed heavily. Chu Junying couldn't believe it. Did she have some problem with Gu Xingyuan becoming the best team member? Chu Junying looked at Pei Si in regret, wishing that she had teamed up with her instead. However, when she looked at Pei Si, she realized in surprise that the latter was lost in thought, just like Sun Jingyu. She seemed so defeated that one would think her world had collapsed. The strangest thing was that Mr. Lua wasn't there. Instead, Mr. Zhu, who seldom dealt with students, came out to distribute the points. The way he looked at Feng Wu was rather strange as well. Chu Junying was speechless. Did she miss something? She couldn't understand the situation. Soon, she would know why Sun Jingyu and Pei Si reacted so strangely. Meanwhile, a large group of students from Class D was on their way to Class E. There were at least a few hundred of them. Yu Hong was in the lead, followed by Tang Ziqiu and Xikong Wenming. Next to them was a person who was about 2 meters tall. Students of Class D? The guy in the middle in the front. Isn't that Lei Bao, one of the best students of Class D? That's right. It really is him. He's ranked 300th in Class D, right? No, he's not. That was a long time ago. According to the latest assessment results, he's in the top 100 now. Lei Bao is such a genius. Just a while ago, he was one of us, but now, he's among the top 100 students of Class D. I envy him so much. Look at his expression. He looks like he's going to kill someone. I wouldn't mess with him. Hey, he's coming our way. So are the other students of Class D. The students of Class E grew uneasy. They had no idea what was going on, but they were scared. Chapter 2590, Feng Wu makes a name for herself. 1. Chapter 2590. Feng Wu makes a name for herself. 1. Hundreds of students of Class D were coming their way. Students of Class E were so frightened that their faces turned ghastly pale. Seeing this, Mr. Zhu had to intervene. However, Yu Hong cupped his hands at him before he could say anything. Mr. Zhu, this is between students. We'd appreciate it if you could stay out of it. Mr. Zhu nodded. Let's do it by the book. Yu Hong nodded. Mr. Zhu used to teach Yu Hong and trusted his former student, so he nodded and agreed not to get involved. Yu Hong walked up to Feng Wu and stared at her with emotionless eyes. The other students of Class D followed Yu Hong and kept their cold gazes on her as well. Feng Wu. Students of Class E looked at one another in confusion. What was going on? Did Feng Wu offend someone in Class D? Yu Hong gritted his teeth and said to Feng Wu, "You killed Wang Junwen." Everyone sucked in their breaths when they heard that. Wang Junwen. Many students in Class E knew Wang Junwen because she used to be in Class E as well. Everyone was talking actively. Is Wang Junwen dead? Did Feng Wu kill Wang Junwen? That's impossible. I'm not saying that Feng Wu is too good to do such a thing. But isn't Feng Wu a cripple? How could she have the power to kill Wang Junwen? None of the students in Class E believed that accusation. But students of Class D were filled with indignant rage. Tang Ziqiu pointed at Feng Wu. She came to Class D an hour ago and killed Wang Junwen in front of hundreds of students. We all saw it. What? She killed her in public? Then Feng Wu is. Did we all underestimate her? Seeing that the Class E students only cared about Feng Wu's capability, Tang Ziqiu was frustrated. Mr. Zhu thought, of course, Feng Wu is capable enough to kill Wang Junwen. She could kill 10 Wang Junwens put together without breaking a sweat. Mr. Zhu was confident in Feng Wu's capability, but killing people in public was a different story. He frowned at Feng Wu. Wang Junwen had it coming. Chaoga snorted. Yu Hong glared at her. Is that so? Tell me then. Why did my student deserve it? Someone asked in a mocking voice. Mr. Zhu frowned. He immediately recognized that voice. It was Mr. Wang, the tutor of Class D. He looked up and saw that he was right. However, there was someone else next to Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang respected the person so much that he was almost humble. Chief Qingwan. Mr. Zhu frowned. He still remembered the little episode on the first day of school. After his defeat, Mr. Zhu had done some investigating. Teachers could leave the academy every 3 days, so Mr. Zhu had made a little trip outside. He had asked around in the imperial capital and managed to gather a lot of information. He had many doubts as well. Was Zhuo Qingwan really His Royal Highness's fiancée? Did His Royal Highness really like her that much? The information wasn't all that convincing. Chapter 2591. Feng Wu makes a name for herself, 2. Chapter 2591. Feng Wu makes a name for herself, 2. From what he had heard, Feng Wu was the girl the crown prince was in love with, which confused Mr. Zhu. Meanwhile, Mr. Wang followed Zhuo Qingwan to Feng Wu's side. He stared at Feng Wu so hard, as if he wanted to drill holes in her skin. You're Feng Wu then? Asked Mr. Wang. Feng Wu frowned at him. She didn't know who this man was. Ziling whispered in her ear, he's Mr. Wang of Class D. They would all rise to Class D one day, so they couldn't offend this teacher. Ziling tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve, telling her to calm down. Feng Wu remained calm, but one couldn't say the same about Mr. Wang. Wang Junwen was his niece. Her father was Mr. Wang's brother, who had put Wang Junwen in Mr. Wang's care. Then she was killed. Mr. Wang would never forgive Feng Wu for that. Their eyes met, and one could feel the tension in the air. However, most people had their eyes on Zhuo Qingwan. Chief Qingwan is here. If I remember correctly, she's not so fond of Feng Wu. If Feng Wu has killed Wang Junwen, she's going to die as well. What are you talking about? Chief Qingwan is so noble and above worldly matters. She would never abuse her power for her own private revenge. Zhuo Qinghuan's supporters immediately tried to defend her. The other students stopped talking, but they wondered whether Zhuo Qinghuan was as unambitious as she was said to be. If that were the case, why had she insisted that Feng Wu should become her disciple before? That didn't sound very unambitious at all. Quarrels could reveal many things. When people quarreled, they had to take a stance. Mr. Wang stared at Feng Wu. You killed Wang Junwen. Hundreds of students from Class D all witnessed it. The students immediately stepped out. I'm Yu Hong, and I can prove it. I'm Tang Ziqiu, and I saw it with my own eyes. I'm Sikong Wenming. I saw it too. All the other students said similar things. Students of Class E paled. They gradually lost all hope that Feng Wu would survive this. She couldn't, not when so many people wanted her dead. Mr. Zhu frowned. He felt that the girl was too smart to put herself in such a desperate situation. There had to be a twist. Didn't Miss Qinghuan think highly of Feng Wu's talent? Will she do something to help her? Many students wondered. But they were disappointed. Zhuo Qinghuan said indifferently, if she killed someone, she'll have to pay with her own life. That's the rule. She gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look. I appreciate your talent, but I can't violate school rules, nor can I help you for personal reasons, since you're a despicable person who doesn't deserve to be saved. Some people agreed with her, but some people frowned. Somehow, they felt that Chief Qinghuan was being petty. Zhuo Qinghuan shouldn't have taken the students for fools. They had managed to make their way to the War Academy. How foolish could they be? Feng Wu smirked. You just have to push me over the cliff, don't you? Zhuo Qinghuan, are you really that jealous of me? Zhuo Qinghuan's face darkened when she heard that. Jealous? Why would Zhuo Qinghuan be jealous of Feng Wu? The others were perplexed. Chapter 2592, Feng Wu Strikes Back 1. Chapter 2592, Feng Wu Strikes Back 1. I'm jealous. Zhuo Qinghuan glanced at Feng Wu. Of you. She laughed. Many people laughed with her. Zhuo Qinghuan was better than Feng Wu in every aspect, from her capability to her family background. But Feng Wu claimed that Zhuo Qinghuan was jealous of her. How ridiculous was that? Why should I be jealous of you? Zhuo Qinghuan stared at Feng Wu and asked in a taunting voice. Feng Wu chuckled. You know what I mean. Zhuo Qinghuan's face darkened a little. She knew what Feng Wu was referring to. She was talking about the Crown Prince's bias. That only made Zhuo Qinghuan angrier. She knew that the Crown Prince was more affectionate toward Feng Wu now, and things could get out of hand if she didn't get rid of Feng Wu quickly enough. Moreover, she couldn't do it herself. It had to be someone else. At that thought, Zhuo Qinghuan glanced at Mr. Wang, giving him a hint that it was time. Mr. Wang stared at Feng Wu and announced, Miss Qinghuan is correct. A murderer should pay with their own life. Feng Wu, it's time to die. He made a move before he finished talking. Hold on, Chaoge intervened. You all agree that a murder is punishable by death, right? Great. She smirked. Wang Junwen deserved it. That statement surprised everyone. Yu Hong's expression changed. Chaoge said, Wang Junwen hired people to assassinate Xiao Wu, so Xiao Wu fought back. What's wrong with that? Mr. Wang sneered at her. I know Wang Junwen well. Now that she's gone, you can slander her however you want. Chaoge waved at Sun Jingyu. Sun Jingyu didn't want to say anything, but she knew that Feng Wu would be very displeased if she remained silent. However, if she testified, she would be working against Mr. Wang and Zhuo Qinghuan. She couldn't make up her mind. Feng Wu glanced at her. It made Sun Jingyu's stomach lurch. The look in Feng Wu's eyes reminded her of the fallen white lion elephants. She would only be telling the truth, so no one would do anything to her probably. That's right. Wang Junwen did indeed hire me to assassinate Feng Wu. Sun Jingyu was the class president of Class E, so everyone knew her face. Her announcement silenced everyone. Mr. Wang gave her a threatening look. Sun Jingyu grew uneasy, but she went on. Wang Junwen promised that she would give me 300 points after Feng Wu was killed. The other students didn't know what to say. Did Wang Junwen really do that? If Sun Jingyu was telling the truth, Wang Junwen had it coming. Mr. Wang stared at Sun Jingyu. What proof do you have? Libel is as severe a crime as murder in the War Academy. Sun Jingyu had jumped onto Feng Wu's wagon, so she couldn't sit on the fence anymore. She switched on her armband, and everyone recognized the voice that they heard. Wang Junwen said, "Kill Feng Wu for me, and I'll give you 300 points." Sun Jingyu asked, "Why do you want to kill Feng Wu?" Wang Junwen said, "Do I need a reason to dislike someone?" Sun Jingyu said, "No, you don't, but you need a reason if you want to kill them." Chapter 2593. Feng Wu Strikes Back 2. Chapter 2593. Feng Wu Strikes Back 2. Wang Junwen hesitated before answering. If Feng Wu is dead, Miss Qingwan will be glad. Sun Jingyu asked, "How does Miss Qingwan have anything to do with it?" Wang Junwen said, "Miss Qingwan doesn't like Feng Wu. If I have Feng Wu killed, I think there's a chance that Miss Qingwan will take me in as her disciple." Everyone looked at Zhuo Qingwan when they heard those words. Zhuo Qingwan seemed unaffected, but she was secretly annoyed. "That's enough." Fearing that Sun Jingyu would reveal even more secrets, Mr. Wang cut her off. But things had already become somewhat awkward. Since Wang Junwen was the one who started everything, it was understandable that Feng Wu would want to retaliate. Mr. Wang glared at Sun Jingyu. "What if you made up the whole thing?" Sun Jingyu was furious. She stared at Mr. Wang. "I didn't." Mr. Zhu backed her up since she was his student. "I trust Sun Jingyu." Mr. Wang snorted. "Wang Junwen is dead now, so you can slander her however you want." Chowga laughed. "Slander? Maybe that's the case if it's one person. What if two people tell the same story?" "Two people? What was that supposed to mean?" Chowga stared at Pei Si. "Pei Si, do you have something to add?" Pei Si had tried to slip away, because she didn't want to get involved. However, Chowga picked her out before she could do that. Chowga smiled at Pei Si. "You can choose not to tell the truth, but there will be consequences. Think about Mr. Luo." That was what Feng Wu had told Pei Si earlier. Pei Si wanted to cry. It was time for her to take a side. All eyes were on her. What would she say? Whose side would she be on? Feng Wu's or Zhuo Qingwan's? Everyone was curious. Pei Si took a deep breath and made up her mind. She didn't say anything. Instead, she switched on her armband, just like Sun Jingyu had. Wang Junwen's voice rang out. "Kill Feng Wu for me. You can name your terms." Pei Si said, "How about 500 points?" Wang Junwen said, "That won't be a problem, as long as you kill her." Everyone was speechless. They all looked at Mr. Wang. Wang Junwen had failed to have Feng Wu killed the first time, so she had tried again. According to what she said earlier, she didn't hold any grudge against Feng Wu, and was only trying to please Zhuo Qingwan. Mr. Wang's face turned livid. The other students had been skeptical when Sun Jingyu was the only one who had proof, but Pei Si's recording made things much more convincing. Wang Junwen had started the whole thing, so Mr. Wang couldn't blame anyone for her death. She had it coming. He had no excuse to kill Feng Wu now. He glared at Feng Wu and suddenly struck out at her. Feng Wu frowned and dodged the blow. Mr. Wang was only trying to vent his rage. He didn't try to kill Feng Wu. He had no reason to. However, everyone frowned and shook their heads. That was out of line. Just then, Dingy ran toward them shouting, "Wang Junwen has woken up. She's not dead. She's awake." "What?" Everyone was shocked. Mr. Wang stared at Dingy in disbelief. "What did you say?" Chapter 2594. Feng Wu Strikes Back 3. Chapter 2594. Feng Wu Strikes Back 3. Wang Junwen wasn't dead. She was alive. If that was the case, what were they doing here? How embarrassing. Mr. Wang had never been so humiliated before. He left without looking at Zhuo Qingwan. From behind, he almost looked like he was fleeing. With Mr. Wang gone, Zhuo couldn't stay there either. She remained composed as she nodded at Mr. Zhu before she looked at Feng Wu. She spoke to Feng Wu like a teacher disciplining a student. "You're a good kid. You know when to stop in a fight. I'm pleased." She walked away at an unhurried pace. The students watched in amazement. That's what a fairy should look like. Feng Wu is just a wild kid. But why do I feel that Feng Wu is much better looking than Miss Qingwan? Good looks don't matter. It's the overall feeling that counts. But even by that standard, Feng Wu looks more like a fairy. I don't want to talk to you anymore. On their way back, Ziling asked excitedly, "Xiao Wu, why didn't you kill Wang Junwen?" Feng Wu smiled. "Didn't you see Zhuo Qingwan's face when she heard that Wang Junwen was alive?" Ziling said, "I saw it. I saw her face. She was so confident that she could nail you. But she seemed very disappointed when they told her that Wang Junwen had survived." Feng Wu nodded. Ziling asked, "Did you keep her alive on purpose? You knew this was going to happen when you went to see her, didn't you?" Feng Wu said, "Earlier than that actually. To be more precise, she had started planning this ever since she heard Wang Junwen's name." Ziling was astonished. Gosh, how intelligent was Feng Wu? She had heard about people finding clues from the smallest hints, and how someone could advance gradually and become embroiled with every step. But this was her first time seeing it for herself. Chaoga patted her on the shoulder. "Why are you so surprised? It's completely normal for Xiao Wu." Ziling didn't know what to say. She wished that Duan Chaoga would stop saying such things. Wait! An idea struck Ziling, and she grew even more excited. "The monthly test is coming up. We're going to be ranked again." She looked at Feng Wu with sparkling eyes. "Your name will finally be on the list." Feng Wu didn't say anything, but Chaoga was excited. "Xiao Wu, your name will be on the billboard. Finally." Just like Ziling, Chaoga had been looking forward to this day. Most of the students in Class E were as good as blind. They had no idea how capable Feng Wu was, and kept calling her useless. Feng Wu showed little interest in the news. She shook her head and said, "I don't think I have to take the test." Chaoga said, "Of course you have to. You must take it." Ziling nodded as well. As a member of Feng Wu's team, she desperately wanted other people to know how fantastic Feng Wu was. She would take pride in it as well. Feng Wu said indifferently, Fine. I'll take the test." Meanwhile, students of Class E were still talking about Feng Wu. At first, only a handful of people liked her. After what happened earlier, most of the students' attitude toward her had changed. Chapter 2595, Feng Wu Strikes Back 4. Chapter 2595, Feng Wu Strikes Back 4. Students of Class E were divided into 3 groups. About 500 people were persistent in trashing Feng Wu. About 800 students remained neutral, finding Feng Wu neither too awful nor too lovely. The remaining 300 students adored Feng Wu, finding her both beautiful and powerful. She had the courage to charge into Class D all by herself, and had managed to get out safely. Not only that, she also defeated the class tutor. The 2 opposing groups were arguing. "What do you see in Feng Wu? Miss Qingwan is the chosen one." "We're not saying that Chief Qingwan isn't as good, but it feels really nice to watch Feng Wu take action. That was only dumb luck." "Do you know what that means?" "It means that it only happens once." "I don't buy it. If Feng Wu dared to go in and out of Class D on her own, she would need more than sheer luck." "If that's the case, let's have a bet. The billboard test is coming up, isn't it? Let's bet on her ranking." One of Feng Wu's anti-fans snorted. Feng Wu's fans were equally persistent. "Sure, let's bet on it. You don't scare me." Hence, most classy students participated in the bet without Feng Wu's knowing. The neutral group stayed neutral, so the battle was between Feng Wu's fans and anti-fans. Lu Qi was the head of the anti-fans. They needed some candidates to challenge Feng Wu. It couldn't be Zhuo Qingwan, because her status was too high. Therefore, she went to Sun Jingyu instead. Sun Jingyu found the suggestion ridiculous. Compete against Feng Wu? Was that a joke? She didn't have a death wish. She immediately shook her head. No, definitely not. I'm not doing it. Lu Qi was frustrated and called Sun Jingyu an idiot in her head. She went to Pei Si instead. Pei Si found the suggestion insane. Fight against Feng Wu? Lu Qi had to be out of her mind. No, no, no. Absolutely not. I can never do that. Pei Si shook her head and warned Lu Qi. Do not put my name on the list of Feng Wu's rivals, or you'll have me to answer to. Lu Qi didn't know what to say. Had the top 2 students of her class lost their minds? Or was there really something special about Feng Wu? Lu Qi shook her head. She firmly believed that Feng Wu was a weakling, and would never believe that Feng Wu actually had any talent. She then went to Gu Xingyuan. Gu Xingyuan considered Feng Wu his archenemy, so he and Lu Qi reached an agreement right away. It was finally the day of the test. Lu Qi had successfully convinced most people that Feng Wu would fail miserably this time. The test for the billboard was straightforward. There wasn't much fighting involved. Everyone only needed to switch on their armbands, which would then be scanned, and the overall data would determine their position on the billboard. The actual data wouldn't be announced, but the rankings were there for everyone to see. The test started. Each of the 1,600 students of Class E had their armbands scanned. After they were all scanned, the ranking started. The bottom name was shown first. The 1,600th. The 1,500th. The 1,000th. Feng Wu's name was still nowhere to be seen. Not only couldn't Feng Wu's name be seen, Duan Chaoge's name also didn't show up either. Lu Qi tried to convince herself that Feng Wu's name would pop up any time now. But she saw her name first. She was 900th. Her face paled a little, because it meant that Feng Wu was slightly better than her. Chapter 2596. What is Feng Wu's placing? 1. Chapter 2596. What is Feng Wu's placing? 1. Lu Qi was 900th. Her face paled a little, because it meant that Feng Wu was slightly better than her. Lu Qi thought that since Feng Wu dared to go to Class D on her own, she should have some talent. She could live with that. She can't be much better. I'm sure she'll be in the 800s. However, she was disappointed. Feng Wu's name still didn't show up after the 800th name was announced. Lu Qi was astonished. How did this happen? Did she miss it? Utterly confused, she grabbed a student next to her and asked, Did you see Feng Wu's name? The Feng Wu? The people around her were also Feng Wu's anti-fans, so they didn't want Feng Wu to do well either. No, I didn't. The student sounded agitated. So, I didn't miss anything. Her name hasn't popped up yet. Lu Qi gritted her teeth and decided she would see Feng Wu's name in the 700s. However, by the time the 600th name was shown, Feng Wu's name still hadn't shown up. Instead, Lu Qi saw Ziling's name. By the time they reached the 500s, Chaoge's name was displayed. But where was Feng Wu? Lu Qi wasn't the only person who was wondering. Before, they didn't care about their rankings much, but all their eyes were on the billboard now. They were all waiting to see Feng Wu's name on the billboard, but it just wouldn't pop up. Is there something wrong with the system? Someone murmured. That's right. Where's Feng Wu's name? Feng Wu's anti-fans grew agitated. The neutral ones remained unaffected, and Feng Wu's fans. They were surprised at first. Then, they became excited and looked forward to what would happen next. Zhao Zhen was the head of Feng Wu's fans. Right now, she was clenching her fists and shouting, Xiao Wu, you're the best. Zhao Zhen was the only one shouting at first, but soon her friends joined in, and their voices grew louder and louder. Lu Qi wouldn't have it. She raised an arm and shouted, Stop Feng Wu! Stop Feng Wu! The two groups were scattered among the crowd at first, but after they started shouting, their positions changed as well. Lu Qi led her team and stood on the left. Zhao Zhen and her team stood on the right. The neutral group stood in the middle. They didn't like Feng Wu well enough to become fans, nor did they dislike her enough to trash her. They were only merry onlookers. But they were equally curious. Who do you think will win the bet, Lu Qi or Zhao Zhen? They've both placed huge bets, like 500 points. Gosh, did they have to do that? That's a lot of points. It's just one monthly test. I don't know where Zhaojin got the information from, but she thinks Feng Wu is amazing. On the other hand, Lu Qi hates Feng Wu for no reason. The winner of the bet depends on Feng Wu's ranking now. I think Feng Wu should be somewhere around the 400s. After all, she's only a new student. No matter how talented she is, she still needs time to practice her skills. I agree. The neutral group believed that Feng Wu wouldn't go any higher than 400th place. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.